Phoenix Nights. Chapter 1061. 3 months. This was the maximum deadline given by Satan. Shinrei didn't think that the demon realm's strongest pseudo-god would bluff. In Satan's eyes, life was just a tool to enslave or fool. In order to achieve his goal, even destroying all the lives of an empire was just an understatement. Even if the 3 empires chose to surrender, this kind of struggling at death's door would not last long. Satan had made it very clear that his purpose was to establish the entire demon realm into a unified country where those who believe in me live, and those who don't die. The destruction of the 3 empires was only a matter of time. The only purpose of everyone in this world was to become a tool to provide faith. If they were unwilling to become such a puppet, there was only a dead end. Such a method was even more ruthless than the light divinity temple in the human world. What Shinrei didn't understand was why Satan was so confident that with the incomplete book of destruction, he could do what the 3 angels with the complete book of creation couldn't do. At present, time was quite tight. Shinrei didn't have extra energy to think about this. If he wanted to pass Satan, it was impossible to use schemes or tricks. He could only rely on one word: strength. Although he showed his unfathomable ability this time, causing Satan to finally choose to leave cautiously, Shinrei was far from his opponent in a head-on battle. Moreover, he was going to Satan's lair at that time. Whether he could return safely was a problem. Shinrei knew very well that the advancement of strength was gradual. Just like he advised Samuel, more haste, less speed. Although on the surface, Shinrei's own progress speed was incredible. In fact, the real time he spent in the training ground far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. Moreover, the advancement of the super system was different from the ordinary level of the demon realm. This time was different from when he faced Eric's. After reaching his current realm, even if there was a training ground with 1,000 times the time, the most fundamental problem could not be solved. If he wanted to improve his strength greatly, not only did he need to cultivate and work hard, but he also needed the strength of others who were linked to him. This kind of power was mainly reflected in star-level strengthening. Rala and Catherine had successfully obtained the deity position of the super system. The mystery of this deity position still needed to be further explored. Judging from the current situation, the more people who were apatheicized, the greater the benefit for Shinrei or the apatheicized himself. Although the time spent in the floating land wasn't long, the effects were very obvious. There were only 3 months left, so he had to make a plan for the trial and leave some time for himself. After settling Jia down, Shinrei immediately went to the UFO land and told everyone about this. 3 months made everyone feel the pressure, especially Catherine. If Shinrei could escape if he was defeated, as the queen of the Shadow Empire, Catherine would definitely not abandon her people. The same was true for Jia. The demon realm finally bid farewell to the situation of war and confrontation for years and ushered in precious peace and rapid development. Once the conspiracy of the Dark Temple succeeded, not only the 3 empires would perish, but everyone in the demon realm would also become puppets under control. This would be a terrible disaster. The problem was that no one could compete with Satan head-on at present. The only hope was Shinrei. Everyone already understood that 2-star strengthening and apatheicized could not only greatly improve their own strength, but it could also improve Shinrei's strength. Therefore, everyone was determined to complete 2-star strengthening as soon as possible to contribute to the pseudo-god battle that was likely to happen 3 months later. Even Dodo was no exception. He trained desperately. However, according to reliable sources, the reason why the slime was so beautiful was because of the food and wealth promised by a certain Her Majesty the Master. Why not the promise of a certain fairy dragon? Referring to the story of the boy who cried wolf. The only exception was Garadam. The corpse necromancer's 1-star strengthening had basically been completed, but all his energy was focused on the research of the wandering souls. Shinrei did not expect too much from this servant, so he just gave him the power of 2-star strengthening. Soon, Shinrei temporarily left the UFO land and went to the Blue Lake mountain range. The trip to Mountain Secret was not comparable to the Holy Mountain of Light. He had to rely on brute strength to visit. Even in a head-on battle, tactics must be emphasized. Satan, who was in Mountain Secret, could be said to have the best timing, geographical, and human conditions. He was in an invincible position. What Chenrei needed now was to offset Satan's advantage as much as possible. The first was geographical. Therefore, Chenrei came to the City of Stars. The basic energy of the City of Stars was already inexhaustible. What it lacked was high-end, Rule energy. Chenrei collected the Rule fragments and Rule crystal balls that everyone obtained during the trial this time. There were quite a lot of them. The City of Stars, which was upgraded to a level 5 civilization city, was quite efficient. It didn't take long for the Rule fragments to be quickly transformed into Rule energy. Since the energy intensity of the Rule crystal balls far exceeded that of the Rule fragments, the transformation speed was much slower. With the addition of this batch of new forces, the red alert of insufficient energy suddenly became almost overflowing purple. This did not include the Rule crystal balls that were being transformed. However, this kind of thing was a consumable. Even if there were many in stock, it would be exhausted. The current super evolution of the evolution pool required a lot of Rule energy. Before Chenrei went to the UFO land for the trial last time, he went to the Isle of Storms in the human world. He selected a group of the strongest titans from the Isle of Storms and brought them to the City of Stars to receive various enhancements and improvements. The titans of the human world were the first generation of the original. The titans of the demon realm were all created by Chenrei according to the drawings of the mad scientist, Deruda. In general, the strength and wisdom of the first generation of titans were slightly better, especially a leader-level titan like Oceanus. It was he who provided the leader that allowed Chenrei to completely control the titans created by the demon realm. There would be no rebellions like the previous ones. At present, the 12 elite titans of Storm Island had all entered the cultivation pool to accept the transformation of super evolution. Previously, the progress had been slow due to energy. Now that the energy was replenished, the progress suddenly began to accelerate. According to Crystal Phoenix's estimation, it would all be completed within a week. With sufficient energy, the rest of the alchemy creatures in the city began to accept the transformation of super evolution that could cross the realm of strength in batches. The prelude to the great evolution of alchemy civilization creatures began. Of course, this super evolution was not infinite. The super evolution ratio of a level 5 alchemy civilization was 2% of the number of soldiers controlled. For example, they could control up to 15,000 giant crystal beasts now, so the maximum number of super evolution was 300. The lamp spirits could control 750,000, and the super evolution could reach up to 15,000, and the rest could be calculated like this. The only exception was the titans, which were controlled by Chenrei alone, so they were not included in this list. However, the production speed of the titans was quite slow, and the difficulty of promotion was much more difficult than ordinary giant crystal beasts. He didn't know how many of the 12 titans would succeed in this attempt. Super evolution was actually the function of a level 4 civilization, city. Once the evolution failed, the alchemy creatures had a high chance of regressing in strength, such as the giant crystal beasts. Some of them would be directly damaged or even completely destroyed. The most representative was the heart lamp of the lamp spirits. The current level 5 alchemy civilization, city, also had an even more amazing elite cultivation pool. It could undergo the second evolution and give birth to demigod-level alchemy creatures. The difficulty and risk of this kind of evolution were greater. If the evolution failed, they would be directly destroyed. Unknowingly, the night fell, and the Blue Lake mountain range showed a beautiful silence. After Atauran finished his evening prayer in the temple, he was walking in the nearby mountains. Suddenly he felt that the purple moonlight in the sky seemed to be blocked by something. When he looked up, he saw a huge black shadow appearing in the sky, almost covering the existence of the two moons. This black shadow was so huge that it looked like a majestic giant beast at first glance. Even the giant dragon race seemed so insignificant in front of it. Even though the Taurans had always been courageous, they couldn't help but be shocked. After a few seconds they shouted. This terrified cry was so ear-piercing at night. The Taurans in the nearby area thought that there was some danger, so they immediately picked up their weapons and rushed here. What happened? Isn't this what? Did you encounter any enemy? Wat was relieved when he saw his people coming. He pointed at the black shadow in the sky, but he was surprised to find that it was empty. There was nothing there. The two moons were still emitting a cold brilliance, as if what he saw just now was just an illusion. In the central control hall of the City of Stars, Jinrui didn't know that when he lifted the City of Stars into the air just now, he had shocked an old Tauren under Mountain Shilong. The Tauren was currently immersed in a special feeling. Captain? The captain of the spaceship. At this moment, Jinrui really felt like he was in a science fiction world. The entire City of Stars had become a veritable giant spaceship through some kind of transformation, which was to automatically change its appearance to be more suitable for flight. The most special thing was the space function inside, which made it almost impossible to feel tilt or shake when flying. It was as if it was on ordinary flat ground. The flying speed of the City of Stars was much faster than expected. Under normal energy, it definitely surpassed the flight of ordinary country-level powerhouses. It was hard to believe that such a huge form could actually have such speed. Of course, this speed was not comparable to teleportation, but the City of Stars had a more powerful ability, which was space jump. Jinrui looked at the star map displayed in the control center, which was the temporary satellite map. He estimated the distance, and ordered to launch a space jump toward the south. His destination was the Dead Sea, which was also the most suitable test site for Rural energy weapons. During the space jump, the City of Stars finally felt a strange shaking, but this shaking did not cause too much impact. Soon, the vast sea under the moonlight could be seen in the distance on the display screen. The sea water slapped the shore, making a strange rhythm. Obviously, it had reached the edge of the Dead Sea. The distance of this jump was quite surprising. Of course, there was a certain risk in space jumping unless it was sure that there was no interference or risk. Generally, special positioning was needed. Moreover, the Rural energy consumed by such a huge battleship to jump was quite large. Jinrui drove the City of Stars to lock onto a barren and lifeless island and launched one of the three main cannons, Chi. A faint beam of light shot out. However, the island did not shatter as expected. Instead, at the end of the beam of light, a huge black hole appeared, devouring everything in its surroundings, including the vast amount of seawater and the island that was torn apart by the terrifying suction force. Jinrui was taken aback. It's actually this kind of attack. This is simply an enhanced version of Star Eater. Chapter 1062. As the output of energy stopped, the black hole gradually disappeared, but the seawater and the island that had been swallowed did not return to their original state. Instead, they disappeared forever. Jinrui could feel that there was a fundamental difference between Pyrolite and Star Devourer. Star Devourer was a true devour, while Pyrolite was annihilate. It contained the special rule power of space. It seemed to be the power of devouring, but it actually disintegrated and banished the target into that special rule space, crushing and annihilating it. In addition to Pyrolite, the three main cannons also had Shatter and Telepathy. Shatter was an attack with extremely strong penetrating power. It had the rule of ignoring defense. It could destroy defense or the power of enchantment to the greatest extent. Its power was amazing. Telepathy could cause strong damage to soul-type or invisible enemies. Not only that, but this move also had a special function, which was teleportation. It could teleport one's own people to the shooting position unscathed. The test of the three main cannons was a pleasant surprise. In fact, the power of these three main cannons had exceeded that of an ordinary Level 5 civilization city. This was thanks to the wreckage of the Level 6 imperial capital that Alucier had given him. Among them, there was an Imperial Capital main cannon that had been modified by Crystal Phoenix combined with modern alchemy. In addition to the 3 main cannons, the other equipment was also quite powerful. Among the soldiers of the alchemy civilization, the gremlin servants, which were the most numerous, were the only non-combat soldiers. However, their role was indispensable. The manufacturing, repair, and operation of various equipment were completed by the gremlin servants. Controlling equipment, including weapons and equipment, was also their specialty. There was a clear division of labor in the detection, aiming, and activation processes. The gremlin servants could also undergo super evolution in the evolution pool. The successful gremlin servants could also become construct warriors and control construct puppets to fight. With the gremlin servants, these capable and loyal servants, as the controller, Shinrui only needed to give orders, and they would definitely be executed. In addition to powerful firepower, the City of Stars also had the same outstanding defense power and various devices with special abilities. After some tests, Shinrui was quite satisfied with this huge, super battleship, except that the consumption of Rural energy was higher than expected. Shinrui was quite satisfied with the results of this test. He didn't return to the floating land. In the following period of time, even if he wanted to cultivate, he wouldn't go there again. This was because this trial belonged to them. Without Shinrui's protection, without some sort of fluke, this was the true trial. Only then would they obtain the strongest results, even though it would be quite dangerous and might even cause irreversible casualties. It was the consensus and persistence of all the trial participants, and the only thing they could do. The sooner they understood star strengthening, the more they could help Shinrui. The slime was an exception. But for the Great Master, and for the many golden things promised by the Great Mistress, Mr. Bug was willing to sacrifice everything. After the City of Stars landed on the island, its color and shape rapidly changed, merging with the island. Plants, reefs, and so on were all present, looking exactly the same. Shinrui was now in a quiet room specially used for cultivation in the City of Stars. There were 3 things beside him: a cloak, a pair of boots, and a shield. His hand slowly reached for the cloak, and the pair of moving eyes emerged in his mind again. The beautiful black eyes were like the stars in the night sky, flashing a quiet brilliance in the brilliance. If the entire Asmodeus royal family is gone, or is struggling like a walking corpse, then what's the point of this so-called highest artifact? If possible, I'm willing to exchange it for the royal family and the free life of the people. Shinrui gently stroked the cloak as if it was weightless, as if he was stroking the cloud-like silky black hair. He brushed the cloak and picked up the pair of light cyan boots. I'm not as dignified as Her Majesty Empress said. Let's be frank. I just feel sorry for my man. There was a trace of undisguised affection in the charming blue eyes. What's more, it was originally taken back by you. Wait a minute, Madam Aunt, that thing seems to be... A discordant voice sounded at the side. The affection in the blue eyes was restrained. She smiled and looked to the side with a hidden needle. Do you have any opinion? Little Lomont, didn't we all vote for it? What vote? Why didn't I know? Pain! Pain! Past! Madam Aunt, your great will is everything to us humble existences. After a while, the discordant guy came forward sneakily again. I say, Madam Uncle, this boot seems to have been worn on Madam Aunt's feet all the time. Do you have any special fetish? Delia, are you trying to murder your husband? After the hand dealt with the wretched guy, it handed over a small silver shield. I'm sorry, leader. I only made up my mind to give it to you today. Blue eyes with a warm and beautiful smile. According to the theory of a certain dragon, there was no pure friendship between men and women, but in Shinrui's heart, she was a comrade in arms and sister who went through life and death together. It was indeed more than friendship, but a kind of affection between brothers and sisters. Hey, I say, leader! Madam Uncle! I'm touched, but there's no need to hug. A wretched voice came out again. Before he could finish his words, he was hugged tightly by his uncle-in-law. Even his bones made a cracking sound. Shinrui looked at the small shield with a knowing smile on his face. dark shadow cloak, breeze shadow boots, illusory shield. Plus the original sword of fallen angel, god-eating mask, furious king's armor, blood spirit ring and demon shield, the highest artifact of the 7 royal families of the demon realm, were all gathered. These artifacts had irreplaceable significance and function for the royal families, but they were still given to him. These were the intentions of his women, his close friends, and his relatives. In the eyes of the mechanic Grand Master, these 7 so-called artifacts were actually just quasi-artifacts. However, Chinrui heard the title of Supreme from more than one person. These people included the Saint Dragon Rodriguez, the Elemental King, and the Supreme Angel. Although there was no follow-up, it was obvious that the true power of these 7 artifacts should not be a single attribute, but after they were combined. Chinrui remembered the concept of set in the games he used to play. Gathering more than one piece could get additional attributes. The most classic was the Diablos series of a certain Snow Company. Some green equipment was far better than dark gold equipment. However, the 7 artifacts seemed to be a little different. He already had 4.5 before, but there was no so-called bonus. However, whenever those guys mentioned the 7 artifacts, they always seemed to be secretive, as if it was something extraordinary. So, if all 7 are put together, will there be any special changes? Fuse into a supreme artifact? This title is too awesome. Not to mention destroying the world and killing the gods, it should be no problem to obtain the power to contend against Satan, right? Chinrui thought for a while. Then the god-eating mask appeared on his face, the furious king armor appeared on his body, the demon shield on his left hand, the sword of fallen angel on his right hand, and the evil spirit ring on his finger. Now that the 7 artifacts had appeared, Chinrui waited quietly. 1 minute, 2 minutes. 10 minutes passed. A cool breeze swirled up a fallen leaf, and a crow flew across the sky with a cawing sound. This was his current mood. What about the legendary resonance? What about the legendary supreme artifact? What about the legendary girlfriend that can be summoned by gathering 7 level 4 admission tickets? The damn legend is always unreliable. There's actually nothing at all. But then again, if the 7 artifacts could really become a world-destroying artifact when put together, people like Satan would have already snatched the 7 artifacts of the demon realm to defy the natural order. Alright, I'll just start. Deep analysis, honestly. It's just that the recognition of the ordinary artifact is different from the analysis of the super system. The former is recognition, but the latter is clearly occupation. I don't know if the effect that the original 7 artifacts should have appeared can be achieved. At this point, I can only take it one step at a time. No matter what, these 7 artifacts have all fallen into my hands. Maybe there will be a miracle, but I can't completely pin my hopes on this. I still have to rely on my own strength. The 7 artifacts didn't resonate and change as imagined, but it made Chinrui put down a certain mentality, and he began to immerse himself in his own training. There was no hard training in the training ground, nor did he cultivate star power behind closed doors. Instead, he sat on the reef every day and watched the tide rise and fall. Catching fish, grilling fish, chopping wood, building houses, carving, writing, painting, walking on the beach in the evening, feeling the sea breeze blowing, lying on the beach at night and watching the stars. This kind of training was more like life. In other words, life itself is a kind of training in life. In this environment, Chinrui seemed to have forgotten the 3-month deadline and the battle. His state of mind was completely empty. If someone was next to him, he could feel that Chinrui had integrated with the entire nature. Each and every one of his simple movements seemed to contain an indescribable profundity. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Under the purple moonlight, Chinrui, who was lying on the beach, suddenly jumped up. His body shone with a bright purple starlight, and his hands drew lines of star marks. An endless galaxy appeared beside Chinrui. It was the Polar Star Kingdom. There were 2 constellations in the galaxy that were particularly dazzling. One was a big bird that was about to fly, and the other was an overlapping curved arch that exuded a pure and strong brilliance. It was full of unique vitality, and became the two cores of the galaxy. The star marks drawn by Chenrui's hands became more and more mysterious. Even the stars in the night sky seemed to be affected by some kind of traction and changed. He was clearly just an insignificant element in the universe, but it was as if the entire universe had become a factor that revolved around him. All of a sudden, Chenrui's movements became sluggish, and the star marks began to stagnate. Finally, he could no longer hold on any longer. With a loud boom, the entire kingdom collapsed. Chenrui's figure appeared on the beach below, holding the ground and panting heavily. It seems like it's really difficult to gather the power of the stars to create a powerful move. Chenrui wiped the sweat off his forehead. On the other hand, I've made some progress in my comprehension of the two fundamental laws of nature. My current purple pole transformation should be equivalent to a mid-tier semi-divinity realm cultivator. The higher a transcendent expert's strength was, the greater the gap between each minor realm would be. Although the polar star transformation's fighting prowess had reached mid-tier semi-divinity realm, it was still a far cry from that person. Thus, he couldn't let his guard down. Chapter 1063. Chenrui did not continue to carry out that kind of life meditation, because the mysteries he had comprehended some time ago had basically been completely digested. If he continued like this, there would not be any results. In a month's time, the combat power of the original polar star transformation early stage pseudo-god had been raised to the middle stage, which was indeed quite amazing. Ordinary pseudo-gods might take hundreds or even thousands of years to achieve this. What was even more rare was that this month was a real month, not a thousand-fold extension of the time law. Under normal circumstances, it was simply incredible. Unfortunately, cultivation was not equivalent to arithmetic. It was not like reaching the middle stage of pseudo-god in a month, and reaching the peak of pseudo-god in the remaining 2 months. The reason why Chenrui had this kind of result was entirely due to the accumulation of previous cultivation, coupled with the result of understanding and digesting the power of faith of apotheosized gods. It was almost impossible to replicate this incredible result in the following time. Chenrui originally wanted to use the power of the constellation to create another big move, but unfortunately, he did not succeed. The super-evolution result of this month's capital of stars was also out. Super-enhancement was extraordinary. Generally speaking, the longer the alchemy creature stayed in the cultivation pool, the more energy it absorbed, and the stronger it would be after the successful transformation. There was also a chance to obtain some special abilities. However, the more energy it absorbed, the higher the failure rate. The super-evolution of the 12 elite titans had all ended. 7 of them succeeded, and 5 failed. If ordinary alchemy creatures failed to enhance, they would be completely annihilated. For example, the lamp spirit previously had its heart lamp shatter and disappear after failing. Even the giant crystal beast was no exception. The titans were different. They did not die, but their strength dropped by a great realm. 5 titans became demon emperors. Among the 7 successful titans, Oceolus and Kralos had the longest evolution time, and their strength had reached the peak of the kingdom. Among the other 5 titans, 2 were at the middle stage of the kingdom, and 2 were at the early stage of the kingdom. Oceolus, Kralos, and another intermediate stage of the kingdom, Nemosun, obtained special abilities. Oceolus was Devour and Regeneration. He could devour ordinary energy bodies and automatically recover after being injured. For the Titans, this was a very practical ability. What Kralos obtained was Spatial Defense, which could create spatial shields to protect himself and his companions. Monimo Suni's ability was Duplication. He could duplicate a mirror image of himself and use it in battle. The attack power was half of his own, and he could maintain it for around 10 minutes. The only flaw was that his defense was weak, and after receiving a certain amount of damage, the mirror image would disappear. At the insistence of Oceolus, the 4 failed titans lost their given names. Moreover, Oshlos proposed that all titans of the peak stage of the demon overlord should participate in the super evolution. Finally, the 12 most powerful titans would be reselected to accept the names given by the master. Shinrei agreed to this request. This time, he brought back a lot of rule energy, enough to make a qualitative breakthrough for the alchemy life in the entire City of Stars. Crystal Phoenix is trying to use some of the residual information and materials of the alchemy imperial capital to study a higher level of second super evolution, which can allow alchemy creatures to evolve again. This kind of evolution is unique to the highest level 6 imperial capital. At present, it is only in the preliminary stage of experiment and research. The only regret is the dark red lamp spirit Manlace. She was one of the future super grades that Shinrei was most optimistic about. The strength of an ordinary lamp spirit is the demon emperor. After super evolution, it can reach the demon overlord, and the heart lamp will also become dark gold. The dark red lamp spirit with S++ strength is the most promising to break through to the super grade. Unfortunately, no matter how he tried super evolution, the dark red lamp spirit could not succeed. Fortunately, her heart lamp is extremely special. It will not disappear because of failure. Shinrei didn't know what method or material Deluta used to make it. Until now, Crystal Phoenix has not analyzed the formula of the dark red heart lamp. Moreover, the combat power of ordinary lamp spirits that evolved to the demon overlord is far inferior to Manlace. At this moment, Shinrei sensed something in his heart, and he immediately entered the super system. In the void of the galaxy territory, a group of translucent things gradually appeared. This mass dispersed like a cloud, and the first impression it gave people was that it was pure. In the seemingly thin clouds, pure and powerful energy was condensed. Soon, he saw a round object in it gradually shining with a crystal light. Then the entire group of energy began to condense and shrink quickly. A woman's figure appeared in his sight. The woman's body quickly changed from translucent to solid. Her facial features looked a little blurred, but she vaguely felt very delicate. Her figure was slender and well-proportioned. Her originally almost naked body was covered with a tight silver armor in the blink of an eye. She exuded a fierce, murderous aura in the heroic spirit. The woman's closed eyes slowly opened. The golden pupils emitted a cold lightning-like light that fell on Shinrei's face as if it wanted to penetrate his soul. If the pressure brought by this light was placed in the outside world, even if Shinrei had already activated polar transformation, he would still feel horrified. However, this was the super system. No matter how strong the energy emitted by this woman was, it was always just a drop in the ocean in this vast and boundless universe. Shinrei did not activate polar transformation, nor did he panic. He just looked at the woman quietly. "You finally woke up, Ben Hong." The woman in front of him was Ben Hong, who had been sleeping for a long time. When Shinrei was in the Holy Light Mountain, Ben Hong deliberately used the method of soul fusion to help him comprehend the complete creation source law. Then, she revealed her ferocious fangs and wanted to devour Shinrei's body and soul along with the complete creation source law. Unfortunately, despite Ben Hong's calculations, she didn't expect that Shinrei actually deliberately used her power to comprehend the creation source law. She went for wool but came home shorn. Instead, she was imprisoned by the tree of nature and the wind and fire prohibition. After comprehending the creation source law and integrating the destruction source law, the power of the super system had a qualitative change. No matter how powerful Ben Hong's power was, he couldn't shake the vast, galaxy territory, power in the super system. After using all his means, not only did it not work, but it also made Shinrei, who had activated the purple polar transformation, understand the magical use of power. When Ben Hong, whose soul was about to be exhausted, was about to self-destruct the pseudo-divine spark in despair, Shinrei threw out a tempting bargaining chip, which was the sealed power of the projection of Quiriana, one of the 3 Abyss Masters. In the end, Ben Hong chose to live and signed a master-slave contract with Shinrei. After devouring Quiriana's power, she fell into a dormant state in the super system. Until now, she finally woke up. The awakening this time was quite timely because Chenrei would face a strong enemy like Satan 2 months later. Ben Hong was Satan's old rival and also a powerful peak pseudo-god. Although he was only in a soul state, and his strength was inevitably reduced, with Ben Hong's help, his chances would definitely increase greatly after 2 months. Ben Hong's eyes moved away from Chenrei as if she ignored him. She didn't speak, but her body shone with a faint light, and a strange soul power radiated out. After the light on Ben Hong's body changed several times, she frowned tightly. After a long time, Ben Hong's eyes fell on Chenrei's face again. I lost. Chenrei looked straight into those eyes. In those eyes he saw many things, the most conspicuous was arrogance. Did you think you had never lost? My soul possesses special powers, especially when it comes to contracts. However, even though I tried several times earlier, I was still unable to break free from it. If I remember correctly, even though the power you displayed back then was extraordinary, it was only at semi-divinity realm primary stage. Even though my soul has recovered by 70%, far surpassing that of an ordinary peak semi-divinity, I am still unable to break free from the power of the contract you exerted. As such, I lost. As much as it's hard to accept, a loss is a loss. I can tell that you are a person who can afford to lose. Chenrei nodded. I don't want to beat around the bush. You woke up at the right time, and I happen to need your help. Given your shrewdness, it shouldn't be a problem in terms of strategy. Instead, you have encountered a strong enemy that you have to face. Ben Hong was indeed an extraordinary person. He was able to see through Zhang Xian's thoughts with just a few words. Am I right? That's right. I have an enemy that I will have to face in 2 months' time, so I need your strength. Enemy? This person should be your old friend. Chenrei took a deep breath. Satan. Satan! Your enemy turns out to be him. Ben Hong was slightly shocked. Suddenly, he thought of something, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. I remember that you once showed me the seal of light, seal of earth, and seal of fire. So you are actually… Perhaps I already understand why you are hostile to Satan. Although this battle will happen sooner or later, it's still too early for you. You shouldn't compete with him so soon. These words revealed quite an unexpected amount of information. The seal of fire and seal of earth that Ben Hong said were the 7 artifacts such as the Angry King's armor and the sword of fallen angel that Chenrei deliberately took out when he fought with her in front of the light temple in order to deter and disturb her. What does this represent? What does it have to do with fighting Satan sooner or later? Although Chenrei was full of doubts, dealing with Satan was the most important thing. Then Ben Hong, ha ha ha! Ben Hong suddenly laughed. The laughter sounded particularly touching at first, but Chenrei frowned. Because of the pride and arrogance contained in this laughter, he heard it from Satan in the fallen angel palace. Ben Hong's laughter finally stopped. I haven't finished a sentence just now. Say it. Although I lost, you haven't won yet. Why? Chenrei raised his eyebrows. This is your kingdom. I tried just now. This place is very special. With my current strength, I can't get out. Ben Hong said resolutely. Now I have cast a mystic art. My soul will be sealed, and I will not listen to any of your commands. Moreover, this mystic art has another function, which is self-destruction. Perhaps this kind of self-destruction can't destroy your kingdom, but don't think that you won't get any benefits or power from me. If you are really not afraid of death, then why did you accept the contract before? Ben Hong snorted coldly. It's just a final effort. I want to make a counterattack after recovering my strength. Unfortunately, I have already admitted my failure. Have you really decided? You would rather die than truly submit to me? Don't underestimate a woman's madness. Ben Hong smiled again. There was a guy named Uriel back then. When he was killed by me because he underestimated this, he still couldn't believe that he died in my hands. Chenrei was actually ignorant about some ancient secrets. He only remembered that the name, Uriel, was mentioned faintly in the conversation between Ben Hong and Michael, but he didn't know where it came from. If a senior false god was here and heard this name that was as famous as Michael and the others back then, they would definitely be shocked. Shinrei could see that Ben Hong's determination was not fake, and his heart immediately sank. I can't believe that the strong reinforcement I'd been looking forward to all this time turned out to be in vain. At this moment, Ben Hong's eyes flashed with a strange light. However, if you can do two things, I'm willing to truly become your help. But you have to promise me that you won't hurt me before these two things are completed or when you fail. Chapter 1064. Ben Hong's change in attitude could be described as a turnaround. After the psychological change just now, Shinrei calmed down instead and asked, "What are the two things?" "First, collect all 7 artifacts." "What's the special use of this?" "Wait until you collect all 7 artifacts." Before Ben Hong finished speaking, his pupils suddenly shrank. He saw 7 things appear next to Shinrei. Seal of wind. Seal of fire. Seal of dark. Even though Ben Hong had always been calm, he couldn't help but be shocked. "You actually got the recognition of all 7 artifacts." "It's not so much recognition, it's more like surrender." Shinrei was right. He did not get the recognition of the artifacts. Instead, he used deep analysis to forcibly mark Qinji on the 7 artifacts. It was indeed equivalent to surrender. Surrender? There was an inexplicable meaning in Ben Hong's shocked eyes. "Who are you?" "Shinrei." "Shinrei as in Chin, Shinrei as in Rei." Shinrei spread his hands. "But now the elusive demon shield, dark shadow cloak and breeze shadow boots have not been fully integrated yet. Can you tell me what will happen if the 7 artifacts are fully integrated?" Ben Hong was silent for a moment. "I'm not sure. Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe everything will end and it will be a new beginning. I seem to have heard someone say this answer before. In fact, it's equivalent to not saying anything." Shinrei could see that Ben Hong was not willing to stay on this topic for a long time, so his tone changed. "In any case, your first condition has been met." Ben Hong nodded slowly. "The second condition is that you must defeat Satan without borrowing my power this time. If you can do this, then I will truly surrender to you." As expected. Shinrei took a deep breath. "According to your conditions, I can't hurt you before I do it. In that case, if I'm killed by Satan in battle, you, who only signed a master-slave contract, will also regain your freedom. At that time, you might even be able to reap the benefits. It's indeed a good plan. However, have you ever thought about it? Now that you're trapped in my world, if I really die, you might die together with me. That's my business. You don't have to worry about it." Ben Hong was unmoved. "No matter what, these are my conditions. Do you agree? In the end, I will have to rely on my own strength to fight Satan. Even without you, I will have this awareness," Shinrei said calmly. "All right, I promise you." "Very good." A hint of admiration flashed past Ben Hong's eyes, and he nodded slowly. "I will continue to recover my soul in your kingdom now. This world gives me a very strange feeling. It's like a real universe. I also want to feel the special power here. You're a smart person, so I believe that you won't do something as foolish as forcefully controlling me. However, I still have to remind you that my secret technique is effective at all times. Any external interference or attempts will only lead to one result, and that is mutual destruction. You're also a smart person. You should know the consequences of not keeping your promise. I will never tolerate a worthless existence like you that even contains some kind of threat. If you can really defeat Satan in 2 months, I, Ben Hong, swear by my soul and the power of this strange kingdom that I will follow you for life." Shinrei clearly felt that Ben Hong's soul did not fluctuate at all. This oath seemed to be a real determination. From the moment the 7 artifacts appeared in Ben Hong's hands, this woman's attitude seemed to have changed in a special way. Shinrei did not know why. After Ben Hong said the oath, she looked at him deeply. "If you're really, I believe you will create a real miracle." As the voice floated, the woman's body gradually disappeared from his sight. "Really? Really what?" Shinrei was curious, but he did not waste time to investigate further. Ben Hong's awakening had also cut off the last hope in his heart. Next, he could only prepare for the battle with all his strength. As Shinrei was about to leave the super system, his face changed suddenly because he felt that a certain connection in his heart was suddenly disconnected. To be precise, it was the power of a certain person's link. The super system's link was somewhat similar to a soul contract, but its power was far superior to the soul contract. Even the linked person whose strength was above him could not remove the link on his own initiative. Now, the link was automatically disconnected, which only meant one thing. The linked person was dead. What made Shinrei secretly breathe a sigh of relief was that the disappeared link object was not the team members of the UFO trial or his most cherished relatives and friends, but someone else. His brows immediately frowned tightly because the death of this person was quite unexpected. Vasilna! Vasilna was the demigod powerhouse that Shinrei subdued in the UFO back then. After receiving star-level strengthening and star sealing, her strength was about to reach the peak demigod level. Under the influence of the super system, she became a loyal believer of Shinrei. Shinrei had heard from Alice long ago that Adeline and Helen wanted to return to the Dead Sea to see their long-lost clansmen and relatives. It just so happened that Lalaria got a treasure map of the Dead Sea. When she heard the word treasure, Oliphius's eyes turned into black crystal coins. She proposed to go treasure hunting together, and several people immediately agreed. Vasilna went together to protect everyone. Alice also wanted to follow secretly, but she was caught back by the dark red spirit Manlace. Unexpectedly, Vasilna died suddenly now, which meant that Lalaria and her party must have encountered great danger. Oliphius's link was still there, but due to the limited number of equal links at the beginning, the other girls were not linked, so it was impossible to know their specific safety. The most terrible thing was that there were only 2 months left before the deadline of Satan's battle. Time was precious, but such an accident happened at this time. Shinrei thought for a while, and he decided to set off for the rescue immediately. Although he had no romantic feelings for Oliphius, and the contract between the boss and the bodyguard was purely a scam, the muddle-headed and greedy black dragon chick had always been like a younger sister in Shinrei's heart. Hey, this chick is much older than you, okay? There was also the well-behaved and docile Adeline, who was also a younger sister. The little mermaid princess with a venomous tongue was actually just good at ridiculing, but she was definitely worthy of being called a friend in other aspects. His younger sister and friend were in danger now, so he must not sit back and watch. As for a certain flat loli who had transformed 3 times, she could only be a bonus even for the sake of Dragon Emperor's father-in-law. Now the location happened to be the Dead Sea, and there was a super battleship like the City of Stars. This training trip was considered to be in the right place. First of all, he must figure out where Oliphius and others went to hunt for treasures. The people who were most likely to know were Helen or Adeline's people, so his first destination was the territory of the Sirens and Nagas. Shinrei took out the nautical map drawn by the Sandman in the Dead Sea. Crystal Phoenix quickly absorbed the information displayed on the nautical map, accurately located the known sea area, quickly determined the location of the nearest Siren territory, and flew at full speed. The speed of flying in the air was the fastest, especially with a super battleship like the City of Stars. The Devil's Snare ship needed to sail for several days to reach the Siren territory in a moment. Through the sensitive sensing system, Shinrei could already hear the long-lost beautiful song. However, the owners of the song would definitely not feel beautiful now. This behemoth broke through the air at a terrifying speed, and the first reaction of the Sirens was panic. Many Sirens then courageously sang war songs, trying to confuse this huge, demonic beast. Unfortunately, that kind of song had no effect on the City of Stars or the alchemy life inside. Some Sirens began to chant magic and were ready to attack. At this moment, a figure instantly appeared above the sea. "Don't panic, I'm a friend of the Sirens. I want to see Matriarch Elena." This voice revealed an unimaginable deterrence to the Sirens. Their entire souls trembled, and the war songs and magic stopped involuntarily. Which friend wants to see me? The sea slowly rose in front, and a graceful figure appeared under the moonlight. This was a very beautiful woman with black hair and golden eyes. There was a little golden crystal between her eyebrows. She wore a sexy robe and exuded a mature charm. It was not the first time that Chunrui saw this superb mature woman. This was Helen's mother, the matriarch of the siren, Elena. Chunrui changed into the face of Aguile, that the sirens were familiar with, and he nodded slightly to Elena. Matriarch Elena, hello, we meet again. Sir Aguile. Elena looked surprised, and she quickly saluted. Chunrui once teamed up with the Dragon Emperor's father-in-law to get rid of the Saint Dragon Rodriguez. He also solved the biggest survival crisis in the sea area. For the siren, he was indeed a benefactor. Helen is in the fallen angel empire. Thanks to Sir for taking care of her. Elena already knew that her daughter did not encounter some encounters as she had imagined after leaving the Dead Sea. Instead, she lived quite freely and happily. Elena was sincerely grateful to Aguile. Not only that, Elena's current strength was the peak stage of the demon overlord, but Aguile was becoming more and more unfathomable in her eyes. He had obviously stepped into the super rank, so there was more fear in her heart. Matriarch Elena, you don't have to be so polite. I have something urgent to do. May I ask if Helen is still here? Elena shook her head. About 4 months ago, Helen and her friends came here, but they didn't stay for a long time. Then they went to the Thunder Snake archipelago of Naga together. They said that they wanted to visit Ms. Adeline's mother and sister, then they went to look for some treasure. I don't know the specific location of the treasure. Thunder Snake archipelago? Chunrui nodded. I'm going to the Thunder Snake archipelago now. Sorry for being impolite. Sir, please go ahead. Elena suddenly remembered another thing. By the way, do Sir know a person named Chunrui? Chunrui was taken aback. He is my friend, right? What's wrong? Nothing, it's just that Helen seems to mention this person's name a lot in the past few days when she came back. I don't know if he is her sweetheart. Huh! Chunrui was speechless. From Elena's words, he could tell that the venomous little mermaid princess did not reveal his true identity, but Elena must have misunderstood. That mentioning was not because of her sweetheart, but because of her habitual ridicule. He could already imagine the derogatory words like lousy and shameless used by the little mermaid princess. I don't know this either. I'll leave first. Sir, have a safe trip. Chapter 1065. Chunrui left the Siren's territory and quickly came to the Thunder Snake archipelago to meet the Naga tribe's patriarch, Modesty, and the patriarch's heir, Strina. He and Strina went to the land of hatred at the bottom of the sea to fight side by side and established a strong friendship. It was a happy thing to reunite with his comrades, but Strina, the host, reacted a little absent-mindedly, but she quickly returned to normal. The news from Strina was very bad because Lilia and others also did not stay long in the Thunder Snake archipelago before embarking on the journey of treasure hunting. Strina knew very little about treasure hunting. She just heard an unfamiliar term, Crimson Double-Teeth Sea. The Dead Sea was too huge. Even the Naga tribe's patriarch, Modesty, did not know where the Crimson Double-Teeth Sea was. It should be far away from this sea. Only Veselna had disappeared from the link now. Oliphius, who was also a link, was still there, but he didn't know what happened to the others. Even Oliphius only meant that she was not dead for the time being. She was probably facing the threat of death, so Chunrui must race against time. The first key was to find the location of the Crimson Double-Teeth Sea. Chunrui thought about it and thought of another, old friend, nearby, the Water Elemental King Lambost. With the Water Elemental King's erudition and familiarity with the Dead Sea, he should know the clues in this regard. After Strina heard that her sister might be in danger, she insisted on going together. Strina's talent was one of the best among the Nagas. Her strength had already reached the peak stage of the demon overlord in recent years. Unfortunately, she had never been able to cross the natural chasm to enter the super rank. She wanted to go out and travel during this time. Before Chunrei agreed or refused, Strina's mother, the Naga tribe's patriarch, Modesty, spoke up. She mocked that Strina's strength would become a burden, then she whispered a few words in her daughter's ear. Strina actually blushed, and she pulled up the scimitar with a clang. Soon, the mother and daughter began to fight fiercely. Out of politeness, when Modesty whispered, Chunrei withdrew his perception and did not hear the whisper. Seeing that the two of them were attacking more and more fiercely, as if they were fighting with their lives on the line, Chunrei finally could not bear to watch any longer. He moved his fingers slightly, and the two winding and graceful figures immediately stopped moving. "I'm sorry, you two. I can't stay here for long. I'll take my leave first." Strina and Modesty felt that the irresistible confinement force disappeared at the same time, and their bodies regained their freedom. Chunrei just raised his finger casually. Both of them knew very well what this power represented. Strina immediately fell silent, and she did not make any request to go with him. "Chief Modesty, I've heard from Adeline that due to the innate relationship, it's quite difficult for the Naga tribe to break through to the super rank. Generally, they have to use some kind of strong and special mental outburst. However, as a powerful person who has already stood in the super rank, I want to say that there are many ways to break through the bottleneck. It is not necessary to sacrifice your life to induce some kind of stimulation." Chunrei's words made Modesty's face change, then he glanced at Strina. "Strina, although you have accepted the power given by Adeline back then, the integration of the foundation is not very solid. If you believe me, I believe you." Strina's firm eyes made Chunrei sigh softly. He signed an equality link with her and gave her the power of 1 star strengthening through the link. After explaining the matters to pay attention to, he entered the City of Stars. Soon, the huge sky fortress disappeared from the Naga's sight. "Let's hope that your strength matches your foresight." Modesty did not continue to provoke or fight. After saying a sentence, she threw down the scimitar in her hand desolately and left slowly, leaving her daughter with her back view. Chunrei had been to the water elemental's residence more than once. Soon, the alchemy city renamed Star Brilliance arrived at the deep blue island and met the water elemental King Lambost. Lambost was not too surprised by Chunrei's progress and strength. In fact, when the third Kings of Darkness provided the elemental source power for the universe annihilation, last time, they had already met Chunrei, who was still the Crimson Pole Star Emperor. At the same time, they also knew that Rala had become a demigod. When Chunrei first came to this deep blue palace, Earth Elemental King Mor said that this was the inheritor of a fake god. Now that Chunrei's strength had reached the peak of demigod, in Lambost's view, it was just a gradual recovery of power. Double Red Fang's Sea? This name made Lambost frown as if he was recalling something. After a long time, he shook his head. "Royal Highness Lambost?" Chunrei asked. "This Dead Sea is vast and huge. The sea you know is only a very small part." Although the answer was irrelevant, Chunrei's eyes did light up. He did not interrupt, but he waited quietly for the following. Since Lambost changed the topic like this, he must have some understanding of the Double Red Fang's Sea. "The sea is not like the inland. There are countless unknown areas and powers hidden in the deep sea. Even demigod is in danger of dying at any time when entering some dangerous areas." Lambost pondered. "A long time ago, at that time, I searched around the Dead Sea in order to find the Crown of Wave, which is the water origin fragment. When I came to a sea area, I felt that my control over the water elements was rapidly weakening. For an elemental king, this was simply an unbelievable phenomenon, and it was also a very fatal thing. The sky of that sea area was crimson. From the fluctuations of the surrounding water elements, I faintly sensed that there seemed to be 2 huge islands in the sea area. I tried to approach that sea area, but I did not sense the power of the water origin fragment. On the contrary, I felt a terrible crisis, so I did not rashly enter that sea area. Instead, I wisely chose to leave. According to what you said about the Double Red Fang's Sea, a demigod contractor died, then it is likely to be that terrible sea area back then. There is actually such a sea area. Shinrui was taken aback. Not to mention the level of power contained in that sea area, the Water Elemental King was the absolute controller of water elements. Just the fact that the water elements in the double Red Fang Sea were out of control was particularly strange. The treasure hunting place of Lilia and others was likely to be this terrifying place. It's not that I look down on your ability, but the degree of danger there cannot be ignored even if you are a pseudo-god. You must consider it carefully. Then, please do me a favor, Your Highness. Mark the approximate location of this sea area. It seems that you have decided. Lambos nodded slowly. Okay. I know that Your Highness wants to remind me that it is very dangerous there. Thank you for Your Highness' kindness. Shenrei shrugged. It's not that I want to covet any treasure, but my friend is likely to be lost in there, and is facing a life-threatening danger, so I must go. For a friend? No wonder Moore trusts you so much. Lambos showed a look of admiration. I remember Your Highness also said that I'm a friend of the water elementals. That was just a kind of investment courtesy when Sir Argulas was present at that time. It was for the benefit. Lambos smiled indifferently. As we all know, the water elementals have always been shrewd, but maybe there will be a shocking war in the future, but before the storm comes, it will be a long and boring silence. On the main plane, our strength is restricted to some extent, and we can't make any progress. After getting the crown of Water Wave, all I have to do is wait. Now I'm thinking about how to pass this boring time all day long. So, let's go. Shinrei looked surprised. Your Highness means, the sea area in that area is very strange. Back then, I relied on the Elemental King's intuition of water elements to successfully enter. If I give you an ordinary sea map, you may not be able to find the exact location even after spending a few months. If you want to save people, I'm afraid it will waste a lot of precious time. Lambos smiled. Besides, since you said that before, I also want to explore that place, although my current strength can't help you with anything. Since this is the case, let's go. Shinrei knew very well that the role of the Water Elemental King was by no means measurable by surface strength. Especially in this almost boundless Dead Sea, with his help, he would definitely be able to reach the mysterious Crimson Double Fang's sea area at the fastest speed. Thank you very much for your help, Your Highness. Shinrei didn't say too much and entered the star, with Lambos. This is the ancient inheritance you got. Despite having countless years of memory and wisdom, Lambos still couldn't hide his surprise after entering the star. To be precise, it's the ancient alchemy civilization, a civilization that belongs to the outside of the main plane. Shinrei didn't hide it, but the secret of the super system would definitely not be leaked. That was his biggest secret. So far, he hadn't revealed it to anyone. Moreover, the Grand Master inheritance had perfectly overlapped with this ancient civilization, which became the best alternative excuse. He was now in a central projection control room that could temporarily exercise most of the functions of the central control palace and give orders. It was equivalent to a projection building controlled by the central control. After it was destroyed, it would not affect the main body of the Crystal Phoenix. Crystal Phoenix could project any building in the Alchemy City into a temporary control room. This was one of the magical uses of a Level 5 civilization city. A very special civilization. The knowledgeable Lambo saw the difference between a technological civilization and an ordinary magic civilization at a glance. Especially when he saw those alchemy creatures that he had never seen before, he was even more amazed. Even the most special existence will be destroyed. What I got is actually just a small part of the remnants of this civilization that escaped to the main plane before it was extinct. The real alchemy civilization's plane has long been destroyed by a terrifying force. As Shinrei spoke, he ordered the gremlin servants to construct the currency map. Lambos didn't care about the alchemy civilization. He glanced at the sea map, and a blue light appeared in his hand. It was a sea map. This is the sea that I know. It should be helpful for your flight. Shinrui immediately asked the Crystal Phoenix's projection to scan and copy the sea map and fuse it with what the star had previously explored. As a result, he was taken aback. It turned out that the sea map given by Lambost was huge, and the sea that he knew was just a drop in the bucket. Flying in this direction, with the speed of this, you call it warship, we can reach the Morose Sea in about 3 days. After that, we need to leave this big guy and walk to sense the existence of the mysterious sea. Chapter 1066. Due to the existence of many powerful and unpredictable forces in the Dead Sea, Shinrui did not use space jump to shorten the time in order to prevent himself from being overconfident. Instead, he listened to Lambost's advice and used flight. With the giant sea map, the starship flew to the Morose Sea mentioned by Lambost without encountering any obstacles. The sea breeze in this area was very strong, and the waves were huge. The starship landed next to a small island. After entering the Morose Sea, Shinrui and Lambost left the starship because they wanted to sense the water elements. Amazing camouflage skill! It's not just a change on the surface, but it seems to have really integrated with the island. Even according to the fluctuations of the water elements in the air, I can only faintly feel something strange. Lambost praised when he saw the scene of the starship integrating with the island. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't believe it. Perhaps only Moore, who has the highest sensitivity to earth elements, can discover the existence of this fortress. Shinrui nodded. The starship's camouflage skill was indeed brilliant. If it weren't for telepathy, he wouldn't have noticed it himself. As Shinrui was about to take out the Devil's Snare ship, he saw that Lambost had already taken off the crown of waves on his head. A strange boat appeared in front of him. The whole body was transparent, and the material was like crystal. It faintly glowed with a beautiful blue light. This is the Blue Water Boat. Shinrui remembered that when he went to the land of hatred at the bottom of the sea with the 2 elemental kings and the Dragon Emperor to deal with the Saint Dragon Rodriguez, they took this boat transformed from the origin of water fragment. This boat was much more powerful than the Devil's Snare ship. It could maximize the power of the water elemental king, and it could also be transformed into a submarine. When Shinrui entered the blue water boat, Lambost's eyes flashed. The surrounding seawater slowly arched the boat like some kind of high-speed booster. The boat moved forward quickly. It was stable and swift. It was not affected by the surrounding wind and waves at all. Even if the Devil's Snare ship is at full power, it is far from this speed. It is worthy of being the water elemental king. It is like walking on flat ground in the ocean. The speed of the blue aqua boat was quite fast, but after 2 hours, the boat still hadn't discovered anything. A familiar feeling surged in Shinrui's heart, and the small island that had fused with the City of Stars once again appeared in front of him. They were clearly traveling in a straight line, but somehow, they had returned to the same place. During this period of time, Shinrui only faintly felt that something was amiss. It wasn't strange for certain regions of the sea to have a corresponding reaction due to special powers. To be precise, this is the outer edge of the double Red Fang's sea area. I thought I could easily enter the inner sea area with the power of the water origin fragment, but unfortunately, I was forced to stop here. This is still just the outer edge? Shinrui looked at the sea area full of unknown dangers shrouded by dark clouds in front of him, and he was secretly vigilant. I'm thinking, since the hostility of the water elements here is dozens of times stronger than that kind of attack. As Lambos spoke, the boat quickly turned into the shape of a big fish, wrapping the 2 of them in its belly. That kind of attack? As soon as Shinrui finished speaking, he suddenly had a warning sign. Because they were in the blue aqua boat, the water elemental king reacted faster. The big fish leaped tens of meters in an instant with a standard fish jump. Countless sharp fangs suddenly stretched out from the sea where the blue aqua boat was originally located. These fangs ranged from a few meters to tens of meters long. They were densely packed like the teeth of some huge demonic beast. Immediately afterward, the fangs that pierced through the air burst open. The explosive force was quite powerful. The blue aqua boat was still in the air, but it was suddenly shaken away. This blow did not damage the blue aqua boat. Although it lost its balance, after turning a few times in the air, it landed steadily on the water with a special force. The next second, the blue aqua boat bounced out again and rushed straight to the side, causing a huge tentacle that stretched out from the water to sweep the air. The tentacle that hit the air smashed into the sea, splashing huge waves. Those huge waves turned into hundreds of fists in the air, surging toward the blue aqua boat. The blue aqua boat nimbly dodged among the fists, and all those fists missed. Shinrei frowned. These things don't seem to be physical? These are water elemental powers that are integrated with some kind of strange power. They resist all outsiders that are allowed to pass. Lambos replied while steering the blue aqua boat to dodge. As expected, the density and strength of the attacks are much stronger than before. Let's turn back into the boat shape and let me deal with these attacks. With your strength, it's not difficult to defeat these attacks. However, we can't pass through this peripheral sea area because it's equivalent to a huge maze with layers of continuous circulation. It's much more powerful than the previous Mirror's Sea. The only way is to sense the source of the water elemental power while enduring the attacks. Only then can we enter the real Red Double Fang's Sea. Shinrei knew that this sea area was extremely vast. If he only relied on brute force, it would definitely be half the result with twice the effort. He could only nod and let the water elemental king handle it. The attacks in the sea area became more and more intense. From time to time, they turned into various forms to launch attacks, and they were endless. The water elemental king's power was exerted to the fullest. The blue aqua boat was like a slippery fish that swam and slid, avoiding all kinds of dangers. It was also like a leaf that could float and sink effortlessly no matter how the sea roared. This state of ease seemed easy, but it actually consumed a lot of Lambos' strength. Shinrei saw it, but he couldn't help. At this moment, the water elemental king's eyes lit up. Found it! I'll leave the rest to you. Okay. Shinrei had been holding back for a long time, and his star power began to condense quickly. The blue aqua boat rose into the air, and its state changed rapidly. It changed from a swimming fish to a huge sea eagle flapping its wings. The water elements condensed by the strange power on the sea's surface did not stop attacking because of this. The huge water column that rose into the sky turned into a palm, grabbing at this sea eagle. There were also several vine-like tentacles wriggling from below. Lambos suddenly felt that the temperature had dropped, and he felt a slight chill in his heart. Logically, as the water elemental king, he was immune to any water element magic, so he was not afraid of the cold at all. However, this low temperature could actually affect his water elemental heart. This is not an ordinary freeze. At this moment, all the attacks froze and instantly condensed into ice. This freeze spread quickly, and the nearby sea surface was completely condensed into ice. Those strange powers were immediately suppressed. Lambos had already felt the true attribute of this freezing power. He was slightly surprised. A very powerful destruction rule. It seems that your strength is still above the ordinary peak demigod. Peak demigod? Shinrei smiled slightly and didn't explain anything. This was the power of Winter Realm. After advancing to Purple Pole Emperor, his use of the rule had approached perfection, far surpassing those with the same strength. However, the water elemental king's self-proclaimed praise was actually underestimating him. The blue aqua boat that had transformed into a sea eagle spread its wings and flew like a freezing messenger. Wherever it passed, the sea surface behind it was frozen. With the help of Shinrei, Lambos could exert the power of the crown of water wave without any distractions. His hands drew strange ripples, and criss-crossed water marks suddenly appeared in the sea ahead. A strange whirlpool appeared in sight. However, the whirlpool soon began to shrink rapidly. The sea eagle turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the whirlpool. Shinrei withdrew the large-scale freezing power of the Winter Realm, and his fists punched out like lightning. The various forms of attacks that the sea water had turned into along the way were turned into granular powder and dissipated. The moment it approached the whirlpool, the blue aqua boat transformed from a sea eagle into a fish and plunged into the whirlpool. A few seconds later, the shrinking whirlpool disappeared, and the various forms of attacks also stopped. The original calm was restored. After a dazzling shift, Chinrui and Lambost finally appeared in another sea area. Chapter 1067. Crimson. The dark clouds above their heads had turned crimson, covering the sky as far as the eye could see. Not only the sky, but even the sea was red. It was rolling and undulating, exuding amazing heat as if it was boiling. The air was filled with a suffocating breath. "Is this our destination?" Chinrui asked when he saw the water elemental King Lambost's shocked look. "Yes." Lambost came back to his senses, and the surprise in his eyes had gradually subsided. "It's just that I still got one thing wrong. I got it wrong back then." Chinrui rarely saw Lambost with such a solemn expression. He asked, "What is it?" "I didn't expect that not only the mutation of the water elements here, but... in short, the danger level of this double fawn sea is countless times stronger than I expected back then. No, it's countless times stronger than I expected before I came here," Lambost said solemnly. "If your friends are really lost here, I'm afraid they will be in danger. If you leave now, it's still not too late. Otherwise, even you will be lost in it. From the moment I decided to look for them, I won't make any other choice. I can feel that at least one of my friends is still alive, and I will not abandon her." Chinrui glanced at Lambost. "I don't know if it's an illusion, but the danger level here should be higher for your highness. But your highness doesn't seem to want to leave. The only thing I can hope for now, or should I say extravagant hope, is an illusion. I hope that my feeling is wrong." Lambost did not deny it. "This is no longer about accompanying you to find your friends. I must figure out the real secret contained in this sea by myself. Then, let's continue together." Chinrui nodded. The environment here was completely different from the periphery just now. The seawater contained a powerful force and uncontrollable violent water elements, which were even more terrifying than magma. Not to mention diving into the bottom of the sea, even sailing on the surface would be greatly affected. The sky gave people a more dangerous feeling. The red color emitted by the clouds contained a more terrifying power. It was like an invisible reef. If one was not careful, a chain of danger would erupt. The higher the altitude, the higher the danger. Therefore, the azure water boat didn't transform into a sea hawk or a swimming fish this time. Instead, it transformed into another form. It was a slender figure, and its most prominent feature was its 3 pairs of extremely long legs, especially its middle and hind legs. They were like spiders, and when they landed on the surface of the sea, tiny ripples appeared, but they didn't seem to touch the seawater at all. They stretched forward gracefully, and with the help of some kind of force, they glided dozens of meters away. Chinrui immediately thought of a certain kind of water insect that he saw by the pond when he was young. At that time, it was called water spider, but only after he grew up did he realize that the real water spider was another kind of insect. This insect was called water hornless. After transmigrating to this world, he had occasionally seen similar insects, but he didn't pay much attention to them. Now that he saw Lambost's transformation of the azure water boat, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Of course, now was not the time to study these principles. Chinrui's attention was focused on the strange sea nearby. After the azure aqua boat glided for a while, the suffocating feeling in the air became more and more intense. It was obvious that it was approaching some kind of power in the sea. The sea in front began to boil violently, and a stream of water suddenly broke out of the water and rushed toward the azure water boat. Looking closely, it wasn't a stream of water, but something that exuded a steaming mist on the surface. It was wrapped in a bloody light inside. The mist on its body dragged a long trace like a tail. Lambost instinctively had a warning sign of extreme danger. The water elemental heart told him that even as an elemental king with special abilities that surpassed ordinary demon overlord, or even super demon overlord, once he was hit by the power of this thing, he would immediately collapse and die. Race, Bloody Soul Comprehensive Strength Assessment, SS Physique, SS Strength, SS Spirit, SS speed, SS. Attribute, immortal, soul snatch. Danger level, low. Shinrui saw the data of this thing from the analytical eyes. With a flick of his finger, a sharp wind easily defeated the pouncing bloody soul. Soon, the data became so dense that it was almost impossible to display one by one. The azure water boat had been surrounded by bloody souls that appeared from all directions. Not all of them were at the state level. There were many demon overlord and demon emperor level. The number was very large. The soul snatch attribute made the super system alarm frequently. It was obviously a kind of strange power that invaded the soul. If it was in an ordinary place in the demon realm, it was simply unimaginable that there were so many powerful bloody souls. In Shinrui's understanding, only the UFO land could be compared with it. He didn't know what kind of existence this crimson double Fang Sea was. For Shinrui, who was at the peak of demigod, even if it was at the state level, a single bloody soul was still not dangerous. However, there were so many bloody souls in front of him, and there was the water elemental king beside him, so Shinrui had to be cautious. Shinrui's hands slowly lifted up, exuding bursts of chill. He once again activated the power of the winter territory. The bloody souls were frozen in the air, and the boiling sea gradually stopped. The freezing began to spread in all directions with the azure water boat as the center. This time, Shinrui clearly felt a different resistance from the previous periphery. Although the area within a radius of hundreds of meters was frozen by the cold power of the winter territory, it could no longer expand the range. Under this solidification, there was a terrifying restless power. The restless power became stronger and stronger, and cracks began to appear on the ice surface. Shinrui frowned, and his open palms suddenly clenched into fists. All the frozen things, including the bloody souls, exploded at the same time. The entire seawater seemed to be missing a big hole, and it was refilled by the seawater next to it after a while. However, the seawater began to boil again. Countless bloody souls emerged again and besieged him again. Shinrui frowned. He didn't expect that even the winter territory could not completely destroy the bloody souls. The aura around him changed again. There was a strange vitality in the boiling seawater. Even Lambost felt that the power he had previously lost was rapidly recovering. On the contrary, the bloody soul's crimson core wrapped in smoke was mixed with a special power. It immediately destroyed the original balance, and the whole body burst open and turned into nothingness. Lambost was secretly surprised. As the water elemental king, he knew very well that this was not an ordinary water or light element healing technique, but another kind of power containing a powerful rule. Creation! Lambost uttered the word in surprise. This Shinrui actually has the power of creation and destruction at the same time. Judging from the power of that rule, it seems to be quite close to the origin. The realm of spring, which was integrated with the power of creation, had a much stronger targeted effect on the bloody souls than the power of destruction. The bloody souls close to the realm of spring dissipated one after another. Unfortunately, the power of this kind of bloody soul seemed to be endless. It was constantly being reborn from the sea and rushing toward this side. Although Shinrui's realm of spring was tyrannical, the opponent's crazy attack without caring about casualties also consumed his power bit by bit. In the long run, it would eventually be exhausted. We should have entered some kind of special kingdom. If we don't destroy the source, these things will be reborn indefinitely. Lambost saw the key and looked up at the sky. If I'm not mistaken, the source should be there. Shinrui followed the water elemental king's gaze and looked up at the endless red clouds. He took a deep breath. I understand. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure had already appeared in the air. His body was burning with a violent aura. In the loud shout, countless winding giant flame dragons flew out. The whistling energy was like a roar that shook the sky, soaring toward the red clouds in the sky. Flame dragon roar! This flame dragon roar carried the pure and powerful power of the law of destruction. Although it was just an ordinary strike, it caused the originally boulder-like crimson cloud to rapidly swirl before it even approached. The red light penetrated straight into the red clouds. Lambost heard a sound of something shattering in the sky. Explosions and vortexes continued to appear in the boiling seawater. The bloody souls collided with each other like headless flies. The entire space of the sea trembled. The shaking of the sea was far more than a general tsunami. The water elemental king felt that his vision was distorted. Everything became blurred. He could only feel some kind of displacement in the space in the elemental heart. When Lambost's vision recovered, he found that the surrounding scene had changed. A suffocating oppressive force came to his face. It was no longer the endless sea and sky. In the distance, two tooth-shaped islands could be seen, facing each other from a distance. In the sky, the red clouds were still densely packed, but there was a deep hole that could not be closed for a while. It was caused by the blow just now. It was this blow that allowed the two to enter the real destination. Even Lambost had never been to this place before. He could barely sense the existence of the two islands by relying on the weak feedback of the water elements. The dazzling light in midair had converged into the armor, faintly emitting a bright feeling. The owner of the armor slowly landed beside him. Lambost's gaze at Chenrei was different. In that situation just now, the strength of demigod was definitely unable to break through the space. That was indeed the real power. It turned out that this Chenrei was not a demigod, but a pseudo-god. Pseudo-god was already the pinnacle of existence in this world. In terms of qualifications, he already had the ability close to the gods. As Earth Elemental King Moore said, this was the inheritor of a pseudo-god, but he didn't expect the speed of accepting the inheritance to be so fast. Moreover, he was not a beginner pseudo-god. Judging from the power shown by the blow that penetrated the clouds, he should have reached the strength of the intermediate stage of pseudo-god. However, Lambost didn't have the mood to think about Chenrei's strength now. He was looking at his feet. There was seawater under his feet, boiling seawater. However, this was no longer ordinary water, but high-temperature magma. The fiery torrent was filled with a dangerous and destructive breath. The torrent near the island faintly reflected crystals. Looking closely, it was a duo flower-shaped object. It was floating and sinking in the terrifying torrent that was enough to melt metal. It flashed with a strange bloody light as if it grew in it. Chapter 1068. Sometimes, it's not a good thing to have a correct hunch. Chenrei saw the abnormality in this seawater, in the distance. I don't know if I should be glad or sigh. I met an old friend again in this place so soon. Have you encountered this kind of power before? Lambost glanced at Chenrei. Chenrei nodded slowly. It's not the first time. Not only me, but also the power I inherited, they are all old friends. I can feel that your highness is also very sensitive to the abyss? Lambost suddenly remembered that Chenrei once said that the ancient alchemy civilization was destroyed by a terrifying force. He finally understood, and some doubts in his heart disappeared. He nodded. Yes, this is a kind of taboo power, and this is the most terrifying place where that power is projected into this world. We can call it the main altar. Main altar! Chenrei was shocked. He had come into contact with the two main altars of hatred and fear in the human world, but he didn't expect the demon realm to also have a main altar. Since it is a main altar, it must be unique for the three rulers. This should be the main altar of the third ruler, Despair. You know about the main altar? Lambost was surprised. I said that I'm old friends with them. Chenrei shrugged. Not long ago, I destroyed two main altars in the human world, and I also destroyed Quiliana's plot in the elves. I believe that both the Lord of Hatred and the Lord of Fear still have a fresh memory of me. Come to think of it, this should be Despair. You actually destroyed the two main altars of hatred and fear. Lambost was shocked again. He knew better than anyone what the main altar meant to the Abyss ruler. I got Moore's Earth Source fragment from the main altar of fear, but at that time, I used a trick to borrow the power of the Supreme Angel Raphael of the Church of Light. As for the main altar of hatred, Your Highness should remember the power of water source that you gave me last time, right? So you used universe annihilation. Lambost suddenly realized. To be precise, its extreme universe annihilation combined with Raphael's brilliant thunder of light. Shinrei looked at the vast sea. The two main altars are both underground. There are also bone towers and altars. They seem to be very different from the main altar of despair. Bone tower? It turns out that the two main altars that you have experienced are in the primary form. They should have been built not long ago, or they haven't been promoted to this form through some special ritual. Lambos's eyes gradually became solemn. Although they haven't reached the complete ultimate form, they are close to completion. No wonder since the maze in the Morosi domain started, no living creature could be seen on the surface or at the bottom of the sea. You mean, all living creatures have been sacrificed? This should have been a kingdom in the distant sea, ruled by some kind of sea demonic beast with a huge vitality. But now, all of this has turned into the power of the abyss. Lambos looked at the two tooth-like islands in the distance. Those two islands should be condensed from the sacrificed white bones, which is the final form that the bone tower will develop into. Shinrei's heart trembled. Those two islands were actually condensed from white bones. One could imagine how many living creatures had died. Compared to this, the Lich King's actions of turning all the demonic beasts in the nearby sea into the undead in the land of hatred paled in comparison. Shinrei took a deep breath. What will happen if the main altar's final form is completed? The ruler will break the seal and descend directly into this world with the endless power of the abyss. Lambos stared at the red sky. In just a few sentences, the hole that had been pierced by Shinrei had returned to its original state. The body of the ruler? Shinrei was shocked. I didn't expect the main altar's final form to be like this. Even without the incident of Oliphius and others, I will never sit back and watch. Once the Abyss ruler descends, then with this sea as the center, the terrifying destruction will spread quickly until it engulfs the entire demon realm. Thinking of this situation, Shinrei's face couldn't help but exude cold sweat. Without further ado, let's destroy this place immediately. In my experience, we should first destroy the two islands that are similar to the Bone Tower. Yes. Lambos frowned, and the blue water boat turned into the shape of a crown and appeared above his head. I can't help you with my current power, so I can only provide some technical advice. If there is any situation later, you don't have to worry about me. Just go all out. I need to remind you that you have to be mentally prepared to face Delothro. With the main altar's current state, even if it can't project a complete real body, it is still relatively close to the main body. It is far from comparable to an ordinary clone. It turns out that the name of the Despair ruler is Delothro. Shinrei nodded. I will give him the same big gift as Quiriana and Sasbak. As soon as Shinrei spoke, he had already teleported toward one of the islands. However, after several teleportations, he always maintained the same distance from the island. This is the power of spatial dislocation. Don't teleport forcibly. Otherwise, you will be banished to a space far away from here. It will be troublesome if you want to come back. Lambos said. A crystal light appeared in his hand. Wherever it went, crisscrossing patterns suddenly appeared in the void, constantly changing. What I can do is just a little mark. Pay attention to the rules and gaps of those spatial changes. Due to the interference of the surrounding strange force, the crystal light was rapidly weakening. But Shinrei had already used the precious opportunity to see the gaps formed by those dislocated spaces. These gaps alternated extremely fast. It was equivalent to the space near the island being divided into layers of doors. And they were constantly changing, making it impossible for teleportation to get close. Swift as the wind. Lambos felt that he was pulled by a force, and then he seemed to be as fast as lightning. Before he could fully react, he had already passed through those complicated gaps and appeared in front of the island. Just now, he was not shuttling in a straight line, but dodging and moving at high speed in countless overlapping spaces. To be precise, it was countless folded lines and curves, but the speed was actually faster than a straight line. The power of speed. Lambos secretly marveled. The high-temperature magma was boiling everywhere. A duo crystal-clear flower of abyss was floating in it, emitting a beautiful and enchanting light. The air was steaming with an extremely oppressive breath. Ordinary strength couldn't be unleashed here at all. The originally blurry island finally became clear. It looked quite huge opposite the island in the distance. Lambost was right. This island was formed by countless white bones. No one knew how many creatures were sacrificed. The pressure it exuded was much stronger than any main altar that Chinrui had seen before. Chinrui was most concerned about the safety of Oliphius and the others now. He didn't know where they were. With the characteristics of the spiritual link, he could sense the existence of the linked person at a close distance. The Star Sealer could also be directly taken into the Star Sealer platform within the corresponding range. However, the space power here was intricate. Perhaps due to the distance, he couldn't sense the existence of Oliphius. The only fortunate thing was that the link was still effective, which meant that she was not dead yet, but the rest of Adeline, Helen, and Lolly were unpredictable. Chinrui's mood suddenly became heavy. No matter what, I must destroy these two bone islands first. The starlight all over his body became dazzling, and the appearance of the stars loomed in the air. 7 huge white light balls whizzed toward the bone island. The light balls seemed to be connected by some invisible silk thread, and they burst apart the moment they touched the bone island. This kind of connection was equivalent to a doubled amplification structure. The overall power of the explosion was several times or even more than a single one. 7 stars explosion! In the successive explosions, a large gap was blasted open on the bone island. Debris flew everywhere, and a depression with a diameter of about 200 meters appeared in front of him. However, this range was far smaller than Chinrui expected. For the entire bone island, it was just the tip of the iceberg. If it was that kind of bone tower, Chinrui's pseudo-god level blow would definitely be smashed easily. It seemed that this kind of bone island was much stronger than the bone tower. Chinrui was about to attack again, but he felt a huge suction suddenly coming from the gap. The power of the Polar Star Kingdom actually rushed out uncontrollably, and it was sucked by the gap quickly. To be more precise, it was the faith power and vitality in the kingdom. What was even more surprising was yet to come. Perhaps due to the devouring of faith and life power, the shattered debris actually recondensed and flew back to the bone island. The previous gap was restored to its original state in the blink of an eye. Chinrui was taken aback when he found that he couldn't suppress this devouring. At this time, the flowers of abyss in the magma flew up and began to merge quickly in the air. A huge face appeared in front of him. Its eyes shone with a bloody luster, and the entire magma sea began to boil. "Retreat!" Lambost's anxious voice sounded from behind. "It's Delothro!" As soon as he finished speaking, Chinrui felt a pain in his head. He felt that his soul had been hit by a terrifying power, and he couldn't help but fly out. With Chinrui's current soul strength after activating the purple polar transformation, it was already equivalent to the intermediate stage of pseudo-god or even higher, but he couldn't completely resist the power of this blow. He only felt a splitting headache, and he had suffered a serious injury. This was even because the super system offset part of it. The after effect of this blow was endless. The strange spirit power penetrated toward Chinrui's soul like tentacles, but it disappeared in an instant because Chinrui was wearing the Fury King's armor that was immune to spirit erosion. Spirit erosion and soul shock were two different concepts. Although he resisted the subsequent erosion power, he actually suffered the previous soul shock. Before Chinrui recovered from that headache, the flowers of abyss in the sea under his feet rose again. In the blink of an eye, it had condensed into a huge palm that grabbed Chinrui's body and quickly dragged him back. Almost at the same time, the face opened its mouth and swallowed the entire palm along with Chinrui. Chapter 1069. This scene shocked the water elemental King Lambost. I didn't expect Chinrui, who has reached the pseudo-god level, to be defeated so quickly. After the giant face swallowed Chinrui, its eyes fell on the water elemental king. It seemed to have seen some enemy, and its murderous intention was very strong. This kind of gaze alone made Lambost unable to bear it. His body was faintly collapsing, but the Water Elemental King's eyes were extremely calm. He looked directly at the pair of blood-red eyes. He didn't care about life and death at all. Instead, there was a hint of contempt. As the giant face was about to destroy Lambost, it trembled suddenly. The blood-red eyes suddenly turned purple, shining faintly. Immediately afterward, countless starlight broke out of the body, and all the flowers of abyss that formed the entire face turned into nothingness under the starlight. Chenrei's figure reappeared in front of Lambost. Now Chenrei's expression was full of caution. The strength of that soul shock was beyond imagination. It had already caused him a lot of injuries. Since he had no time to treat it now, he could only temporarily suppress the injuries. It seemed that the main altar that was close to a complete form was indeed far from comparable to the one he had encountered before. Delothro's projection was already close to the existence of the main altar, and its strength was quite amazing. This is just Delothro's phantom. It only has a small part of the power of the clone. The real projection clone should still be in some kind of deep sleep state. It wants to fully absorb the power of the main altar to complete the ritual of descending. The Bone Island must be destroyed. Lambost's voice surprised Chenrei even more. This is only a part of the projection's power. A terrifying blood-red wave was set off in the sea. Dwoodwa's flowers of abyss condensed again and combined into the form of Delothro again. This time, it was not only the face, but also half of the body and arm. As he raised his hand, waves of blood with amazing power wrapped toward Chenrei from all directions. Lambost felt that this blood wave contained a power similar to corrosion, which was Delothro's special ability that could destroy and disintegrate the power of a nation. Immovable as a mountain, Chenrei also felt the threat of the blood waves. He shouted in a low voice, and the starlight around him seemed to solidify, forming an invisible force field that protected him and Lambost. No matter how the blood wave surged, the starlight remained motionless, and was actually unable to do anything to it. The impact of the blood waves grew stronger and stronger. The solidified starlight seemed to be unable to withstand it, and collapsed. At this moment, everything became blurry. With Lambost's eyesight, he could no longer see clearly. He could only sense in his elemental heart that those purple lights that were moving at a high speed drew countless terrifying arcs. They followed a special rhythm, and their power kept increasing. A whirlwind! No, a whirlwind of this degree should be called a storm. Purple Polaris Storm. The approaching blood waves were rolled back by the purple polar star storm, forming a huge whirlpool in the nearby sea. Delothro's body was suddenly divided into countless pieces, and the storm didn't stop but swept toward the Bone Island. In the blink of an eye, the outer edge of the Bone Island had already shrunk. By the time the storm stopped, the huge island had been reduced by 1/3. However, it was still useless. The strange power that devoured faith and life appeared again, and it quickly returned to its original state. After 7 stars explosion and red extinction, purple polar star storm was actually in vain again. Looking for such a situation, even the final killer move, Nirvana Dimension, would not work. Chenrei panted slightly. Although purple polar star transformation was far better than crimson polar star transformation, it was not endless. The previous continuous attacks and defenses had consumed a lot of star power. The most important thing was that it couldn't really cause real damage to this main altar. Lambost's surprised voice sounded. These 2 bone islands should have a complementary special effect. Unless they are destroyed at the same time, otherwise they will not be really damaged. A sense of powerlessness surged in Chenrei's heart. I can't even destroy one now, let alone 2. Not to mention there is still Delothro's phantom in front. He suddenly realized that Lambost's voice was extremely weak. When he looked back, he saw that the Water Elemental King's body had become thin, and its life force was rapidly weakening. It seemed that it had suffered a lot of damage just now. Purple Polar Star Emperor had already consumed a lot of power, and the injury from the previous soul shock began to act up again. Chenrei knew that he couldn't do anything today. He thought quickly and shouted, Lambost, don't use your power to resist. I will take you away with the Tower of Glory! Lambost immediately converged all his power. With a flash of light, he was taken into the Tower of Glory. At the same time as Lambost was taken into the Tower of Glory, a Stargate had appeared in front of Chinray. At this time, the Despair Lord's phantom that was torn apart by the purple polar star storm condensed again, and a powerful soul fluctuation broke out again. It was the soul shock type power that hit Chinray previously. Chinray's figure became transparent in an instant, and the invisible, soul shock power was reflected back incredibly. Delacero's body shook, and cracks appeared on his giant face. The cracks were full of blood-red magma. After it healed, the enemy was gone, and the light gate gradually dimmed and disappeared. Chinray's figure became transparent in an instant. A few seconds later, another light gate appeared. Chinray's figure appeared in the light gate. As the light flickered, Lambost reappeared, and the purple starlight on Chinray's body quickly dimmed. Your injury is not light. Lambost glanced at Chinray. It's Delothro's soul power. This kind of power is very powerful, and it can also cause a terrifying corrosive power. Fortunately, you are not affected by the corrosive power, but your soul is injured to a certain extent. The recovery of the soul is a bit troublesome. It is not like ordinary injuries. Unfortunately, my power is consumed a lot, otherwise, I should be able to help you recover quickly. I'm fine. Chinray saw that Lambost's situation was a little bad. How is your injury? I won't die yet. Lambost shook his head. Your ability is amazing. You can actually escape from that kind of country easily. This island is the Morose Sea. It's just a special space skill. Previously in the Morose Sea, Chinray had already set up a star point just in case. This star point was set up by him temporarily taking back the star point of the Bloody Empire capital. Because after setting a 3-month deadline with Satan, the star points of the 3 capitals seemed a bit redundant. I can see that your situation is a little bad. Let's treat it first. A crystal crown appeared on Chinray's head, glowing with a soft and sacred light. Under the illumination of this light, Lambost's originally thin body became solid again, and Chinray's own injury also began to recover quickly. The Crown of Thorns, divine healing technique, could fundamentally repair the soul and body injuries, promote the reproduction and regeneration power, and there was no hidden danger of overdrafting life potential. It could be called the most powerful healing technique. The power of light? And it is so pure and powerful that even the soul is recovering. Lambost was greatly surprised. No, there is no fluctuation of light elements in your body, but it is the effect of a prop. That crown, its name is Crown of Thorns. Perhaps you will be more familiar with another name, Creation Container. Creation Container! Is it the container that creates the origin? The Water Elemental King looked at Chinray with a little more shock. You can actually cast the Creation Container so easily? Not only this, the 3 containers are all. They recognize me. Chinray shrugged. There was a cup in his hand, the Holy Grail. I still remember that you can cast 2 artifacts of the 7 royal families at the same time. Lambost finally nodded solemnly. I'm basically sure of who you are now. Chinray was startled. Who? Crossover? Super system? That was impossible. You saved my life, so I won't reveal your secret. If you're worried, you can kill me, Lambost said lightly. Secret? The more certain the Water Elemental King was, the more curious Chinray felt. Thinking of Ben Hong's tone at the beginning, he faintly understood that this should be a wonderful misunderstanding. The Water Elemental King's last sentence made him laugh. I now believe that the Water Elementals are paranoid, my friend Lambost. The title of friend made Lambost silent for a moment. As a friend, your adjective should be added with wisdom. It's my honor, wise and paranoid Water Elemental Lambost. Lambost bowed his head slightly. The same honor, mysterious descendant? Or inheritor? What is mysterious? Chinray saw Lambost's indifferent face clearly showed stop pretending, so he shook his head helplessly. Let's change the topic. You seem to know much more about the abyss than me. Are they also the ultimate enemies of the Elemental King? They are a taboo. Lambos did not deny it. In the sense of existence, they should be the ultimate enemies of the entire world. Then the Elemental War. Lambos interrupted. I'm sorry, I can't answer this kind of question for you. Whether as an Elemental King or as a friend, you will understand after you obtain the complete inheritance or memory. Well, I'm being presumptuous. Shinrei did not dwell on this topic of misunderstanding. If I get all the recognition of the 7 royal artifacts, or I can control all the 7 artifacts, what will happen? I don't know. Lambos shook his head. Maybe it will be some kind of end, or maybe it will be some kind of beginning. This is already the standard answer for me. Shinrei smiled bitterly. He had heard similar answers from the Dark Elemental King and Benhong, but now the Demon Shield, Dark Shadow Cloak, and Breeze Shadow Boots had all begun to be analyzed by the super system. The only thing that was needed was time, or after all the 7 artifacts were analyzed, there would be an answer. Well, now is not the time for archaeology or exploration. This time we are considered to have failed miserably. I wonder if there is any way to solve the main altar of despair? Speaking of this, Lambos' expression immediately became solemn. The only way is to destroy the 2 bone islands at the same time, and then eliminate Delothro's projection. Shinrei frowned deeply. This is almost an impossible task. Chapter 1070. Destroy the 2 bone islands at the same time, then destroy the real projection. Judging from the situation of the battle just now, this was too difficult. Even the immortal phantom of the Despair Lord was in existence that was difficult to defeat, let alone a projection that was close to the real body. According to the Water Elemental King, in order to defeat Delothro, the Bone Islands must be destroyed. Otherwise, Delothro's power would be endless, and there would be no chance of winning. After the destruction of the Bone Islands, it was equivalent to cutting off Delothro's endless power, so it was possible to defeat him. Not to mention the sturdiness of the Bone Islands, they also had the characteristic of complementing each other. They were almost immortal unless there were 2 powerful people attacking at the same time. To complete this first step, at the very least, Shinrei needed to find a helper, a powerful helper. Oliphius and Lalaria were the only 2 daughters of Dragon Emperor Agilas. If he knew that his daughters were in danger, with the temperament of the Dragon Emperor's father-in-law, he would definitely come immediately. The problem was that Agilas was at most an early-stage pseudo-god now, which was far inferior to Shinrei. Even if he had the powerful talent of the dragons, he was not strong enough after all. Even if he risked his life, he would not succeed. Letting Agilas come was tantamount to sending him to his death. Shinrei now had a pearl of holy shadow in his hand, so he could consider using his clone to attack at the same time. However, the pearl of holy shadow could only exert half of the attack power of the main body, and its power was limited. It was like a battery. The more it was used, the less it would be. Especially the polar star transformation consumed a lot of power, so it could not be maintained for a long time. In the case of a head-on confrontation, even the main body could hardly withstand Delothro's attack, let alone the clone. Shinrei thought for a while, entered the super system, found Benhong, and explained the situation. Abyss? Benhong seemed to be recalling. That's the curse of taboo, curse? Your kingdom is quite wonderful. Benhong changed the topic. I can hardly distinguish the authenticity of this universe. That kind of almost vast faith in life, even the kingdom of the pseudo-god is only a drop of water in the ocean in front of this power. What you feel is only a part of this universe. Shinrei thought of something and asked, Do you want to become a god? Of course. Benhong's gaze landed on Shinrei. He said calmly, You can make me a god? You once said that the pinnacle of power is absolute, but the path to the pinnacle is relative, and there is more than one. I can let you have the faith and godhood of this universe. This is not an illusion, but a real godhood. This should be the best shortcut for you to embark on the path of godhood. I know your goal. Benhong pondered for a moment. What if I'm not willing? Shinrei frowned. You should be very clear about the consequences of the descent of the abyss. At that time, even if you can obtain freedom, you will still face destruction. Seeing Ben Hong's indifferent smile, Shinrei's heart sank. He asked unwillingly, You'd rather give up your life? Rather choose to destroy everything? Why? Ben Hong trembled slightly. There was an incomprehensible look in his eyes. I just want to do it. Shinrei shook his head. This woman's mentality simply could not be understood with common sense. Perhaps it could really be described as crazy, as she said. In your eyes, the reason why I haven't been destroyed is because of my value. If you want to fight against enemies like Satan, Charlie, or Michael, and if you want to protect someone, you need my power. Ben Hong said calmly, The value I give to my existence is those two conditions. You still have one that you haven't fulfilled. Before that, I won't give you any help, even if my soul is destroyed, or the entire world turns into nothingness. After saying that, Ben Hong's figure gradually faded away. Perhaps this crazy woman had her own special story, but these were not in Shinrei's consideration. What he was worried about now was the main altar. Ben Hong had made it very clear that it was impossible for him to take action, so he could only think of another way. Shinrei's consciousness left the super system, and he adjusted his emotions. Lambost, do you know some pseudo-god friends? Elemental King's friends are very few. Lambost shook his head. In other words, friend is a redundant noun for the Elemental King. There are always special cases, aren't there? Shinrei shrugged. The implication was that there was one in front of him. Maybe. Actually, I just want to try something new with a clear purpose. You and Moore are real friends. Sure enough, you are paranoid. Okay, plus the wise water elementals. Everything has a beginning. Let's get down to business. In the main plane, the Elemental King has no other pseudo-god friends. As for enemies, especially the enemies of the past, there are a lot of them, but most of these people's lives are drowned in the long river of history. Lambost hesitated a little, and there was a little crystal blue light in his hand. He flew it toward Shinrei. This is for you. The blue light was a necklace, and the pendant was a blue bead. Its breath seemed to be restrained, and it looked plain. What is this? Water Shadow Pearl. It has a special restraining effect on Delothro's kingdom, but the effect is limited. You can't rely on it completely. Thank you. With this, I have more confidence. You are too optimistic. Judging from the situation of the main altar just now, Delothro's true projection has probably reached the level of the peak pseudo-god. Unfortunately, my power in this world is too weak. I can only give you this little help, and the premise is that you have to destroy the two bone towers first. His projection has reached the level of the peak pseudo-god? Shinrei was taken aback. Delothro is the weakest of the three masters. Lambost's words moved Shinrei again. Then, aren't the three masters of the abyss gods? They are not gods yet. Lambost looked at the sky high above, shook his head, and didn't say anything else. Shinrei recovered from the shock, put the water shadow pearl into his clothes, and fell into deep thought. Putting aside the real strength of the three masters, the most important thing now was the Despair Lord's clone. Since the strength of the clone was at the peak pseudo-god, which belonged to the level of Michael and Raphael, then he definitely couldn't defeat it. At this time, there was only more than a month left before the 3 months between him and Satan. There were wolves in front and tigers behind. The power of the creation vessel has healed most of my injuries. Now I'm going to the sea and use the power of the water elements to heal. I should be healed in a day. Lambost called out, turned into a stream of water, flew into the sea and disappeared, leaving only Shinrei, who was still in deep thought. Shinrei's mind seemed to be some kind of picture, turning quickly, searching for various possibilities. Suddenly, an idea came to him, and the picture was fixed on one thing. I think I found a helper. Lambost? Shinrei came back to his senses, only to find that the Water Elemental King had disappeared. He seemed to remember what Lambost said before about going to the sea to be completely healed, and he couldn't help but pat his head. He thought about it and didn't rush to complete something. He just sat down cross-legged and channeled star power to recover. Time flew by. When Shinrei opened his eyes, it was already the next morning. At this time, there was already one more thing in his hand. It was a round ball, sparkling and translucent. Shinrei took a deep breath, squeezed hard, and the ball shattered. The broken crystal chip automatically flew up and condensed into a blurry human figure in the air. This human figure became clear in an instant. A pair of eyes glowed with a cold electric light, and it fell on Shinrei. You actually used this crystal ball, which is unexpected to me. However, it can also be said to be in the process of cleaning. At least you made the right choice. One last thing to confirm. Can I give a welcome speech for you to join the Darkness Temple? This human figure is actually Satan. What Shinrei crushed was the communication crystal ball left by Satan. Satan is an enemy, and Delothro is also my enemy. It is definitely unwise to be attacked on both sides. It is the best strategy to unite the enemy and drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. When he was in the fallen angel palace, Satan gave 3 choices. 1. Come to Mountain Secret to visit within 3 months. 2. Crush the crystal ball to join the Darkness Temple. 3. Satan will come to the fallen angel capital 3 months later to destroy everything. Now that Shinrei crushed the crystal ball, Satan's first reaction was naturally that the other party gave in and was willing to join him. Sir Satan, don't get me wrong. I have no intention of joining your Darkness Temple. This sentence made Satan's face change slightly. This kind of little trick to provoke is not a wise move. This crystal ball is actually a spatial positioning secret treasure. I can descend at any time. Since you really want to court death in advance, then I will give you the result of turning into ashes now. Spatial positioning? Very good. Shinrei did not panic. Sir Satan, before you make a certain decision, let me explain first. I summoned you not to provoke you, but there is a very important matter. The nature of this matter even far exceeds the dispute between us. I'll give you a chance to be mysterious as your last words. Shinrei smiled indifferently and remained unmoved. I'm not sure about the trip to Mountain Secret, but I have not lost confidence. This is a battle between us, or it will determine the master of this world. Whether it is you or me, it is us. Even if it is destroyed, it is us, not other existences such as... It's me, not us. Satan's mind was extremely agile. He interrupted Shinrei's words and said contemptuously, Okay, now you can tell me your trick to sow discord. Who do you want to use my hand to deal with? Delothro. Shinrei said a name. Satan's eyes suddenly became dignified, and his burning gaze fell on Shinrei's face. What do you want to do with this name? Don't be too self-righteous. Looking down on your opponent is the same as looking down on yourself. Shinrei said sternly. I just found Delothro's main altar, and it is the main altar that is about to become the ultimate form. Ultimate form? Satan's pupils shrank slightly. I think with Sir Satan's insight, there should be no need for me to explain more things. My current position is the Dead Sea. I just escaped from that place yesterday. The main altar has 2 bone islands. It must be destroyed at the same time to destroy the entire main altar and defeat the projection of the Despair Lord. I can't destroy 2 bone islands at the same time alone, so I want to invite Sir Satan to help us solve the covetous people outside our battlefield. Why should I believe you? Satan sneered. Even if it is not a provocation, it may be some kind of trap. I'm not afraid of your tricks, but I won't insult my own wisdom. What if you add the guarantee of the water elemental messenger? Lambost's voice sounded. Shinrei noticed that Lambost used the title of Water Elemental Messenger instead of Water Elemental King, Water Elemental Messenger. The appearance of Lambost finally made Satan moved. Back then, I discovered the abnormality of this sea, but I didn't expect it to be Delothro's main altar. Now the main altar is about to complete its ultimate form. Once the true body of the ruler descends, the power that seals the taboo will completely collapse. No matter what you want to have, The only thing you can have at that time is to lose it. Water elemental messenger, it should be said to be a projection. I don't know what kind of relationship you have with that guy. I cannot believe him, and I cannot believe you. Satan pondered for a while and showed a dignified expression for the first time. But I can't not believe what the water elemental messenger said about them. Chapter 1071. What Satan said was that the secret treasure crystal ball had a positioning function was by no means an exaggeration. Soon after, Satan used this positioning to project his clone through space projection. It was not only the clone that came, but the power of the clone increased bit by bit, and it soon became the Rio body. Feeling the pressure from the strongest fake god of the demon realm, Shinrei secretly channeled star power to make his mind completely calm. He said, "Welcome, Your Excellency Satan. This time, we will work together to destroy the altar of despair. Cooperation is not the keyword between us, even if we have a common enemy." Satan's cold eyes locked onto Shinrei, and invisible soul pressure surged over. Shinrei clearly felt Satan's murderous intention. He had already secretly prepared various defensive and escape methods. He remained calm on the surface, looking calm. "Water elemental messenger, we haven't seen each other for many years." Satan sized up Shinrei for a while, retracted his murderous intention, and looked at Lambost. "We are neither friends nor enemies. We can be said to be acquaintances, Sir Satan." Lambost nodded. "According to the strength of this projection, it is not an exaggeration to call you Sir." Satan set his eyes on the crown of water wave. "Water origin fragment? I seem to have seen it in someone's hands." Shinrei once showed Satan the water origin fragment at Mountain Secret, so he knew that Satan was already suspicious. He continued, "This is the treasure discovered by my believer, and it is also the reason why I met this Royal Highness King." Lambost naturally would not expose him. "No matter what grudges the two of you have before, this time I hope that everyone can work together to destroy Delothro's main altar. It just so happens that the water elemental messenger is here. I will take this opportunity to give you another choice." Satan looked at Shinrei with a sneer. "This time, if I destroy Delothro first, you will surrender to me, offer the creation origin law, and join the Darkness Temple. If you destroy Delothro first, then I abandon the plan of Darkness Temple? You still don't have this qualification," Satan said proudly. "However, I can give you another 100 years of time." Shinrei thought quickly. This bet should have been decided by Satan at the last minute. The creation source should be the key. Although he did not know why Satan was suddenly so eager about the creation source, which he was previously not very interested in, it was also an opportunity for Shinrei. "With my current strength, I have almost no chance of winning when I go to Mountain Secret 2 months later. Now I see a glimmer of hope by betting against Delothro. The water shadow pearl given by the water elemental king should also play a certain role." "I'm sorry, but this condition is impossible." Shinrei already had an idea in his mind. He shook his head resolutely. "It seems that the complete creation source in my hand is still quite valuable to Sir. I really need some time to comprehend the power of creation. We might as well change the terms of the bet. If I lose, I will show you the complete power of the origin of creation, and the 3-month period will still be the same. If you lose, we will push back the time of our battle by another 10 years. I wonder if Lord Satan has confidence in himself? Clumsy little trick. I'm afraid that you will die in the hands of Delothro." Satan snorted coldly. He was obviously disdainful of the provocation in the last sentence. In fact, Satan had his own calculations. The Book of Destruction was still missing a page to be complete. There was still a big flaw if he wanted to barely complete the faith transfer. Therefore, he had been brewing a secret technique to complete the Book of Destruction and temporarily replace the incomplete part. At least, it could more smoothly complete the most important function of stealing faith. Satan was originally an extraordinary figure. After feeling the creation source's power in the fallen angel palace last time, he had an inspiration in his heart. With the help of the creation source's reverse deduction, he actually made the originally stagnant destruction source's power gain a surprising insight. Although Chunrui's performance was mysterious, Satan believed that as long as this enemy dared to come to Mountain Sacred, he had full confidence to turn him into ashes. However, after comprehending the great benefits of Creation Source in this month's closed-door training, Satan had the idea of capturing the enemy alive to obtain Creation Source. Showing, the origin power and offering, the origin were two different concepts. However, for Satan, the meaning of Creation Source was not to possess, but to comprehend, so the difference was not big. For the time being, this person was more valuable alive than dead. However, the pseudo-god powerhouse had their own uniqueness. It was more difficult to capture him alive than to kill him. Moreover, this person had escaped from the hands of Michael and Raphael and obtained the complete Creation Source. It was by no means a fluke. When he exerted the pressure just now, the calmness that the other party showed was not faked. He must have the confidence to escape from his hands. Therefore, Satan proposed the bet. Now, after hearing Chunrui's bargaining, Satan's mind began to move. Although the strength of this guy in front of me is hidden at the peak of demigod, it should be far inferior to me. If it is really the projection of Delothro projected by the main altar that is close to the ultimate form, then his strength is definitely above this person. I just need to be careful not to let him exploit the loophole, then I should be able to win. Life and death are predestined. I'm not even in a hurry, so Sir Satan doesn't have to worry about it. Lambos looked at Chunrui, then looked at Satan, and added, I also want to see how close the power that is close to God is. Satan's eyes flashed, and he had made up his mind. Okay. Chunrui nodded, and a faint light appeared in his hand. Before we go together, in order to ensure the integrity of both parties, please sign this equality contract first. Your name is Richard? What is this one? Not to make any moves against the other within 10 years? Not to attack your companions in a cooperative battle? Humph, ridiculous caution. Satan glanced at the content of the contract, showed contempt, waved his hand, and signed the contract. After signing the contract, Chunrui secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but he knew that in this bet, he was still in the absolute west wind. He still couldn't relax at all. He must assess the situation and seize every possible opportunity. The strength of the Despair Lord was not to be underestimated, especially this terrifying main altar that was close to the ultimate form. Diarasel was already close to the true body. Chunrui wanted Lambos to stay, but the Water Elemental King insisted on going together. From the Morose Sea to the Twin Red Fangs Sea was still dangerous, and Satan's strength was also revealed at this time. With just a little bit of power, he easily passed through the maze of the Morose Sea. Even the kingdom on the periphery of the Twin Red Fangs Sea that Chunrui used the power of invasion like fire. To break through, Satan just waved his hand, and the imprisoned space was lifted. He came directly to the sea of the main altar. Looking at the rolling magma under his feet and the bone island in the distance, feeling the suffocation in the air, Satan's eyes began to become serious. This aura is really close to the ultimate form. Satan didn't wait for Chunrui to move. His figure flashed, and he appeared in front of a bone island. A dark golden light came out of his hand and whizzed toward the bone island. The nearby magma sea of blood was divided by the aftermath of the light. The light hit the bone island, and it suddenly burst open, revealing a huge gap. The power of this casual blow alone far exceeded Chunrui's ultimate move in the state of purple polar transformation. Satan frowned because he had already felt the subsequent loss of faith and vitality. In the blink of an eye, the gap had been restored to its original state. Satan's mind moved, and he appeared in the middle of the two bone islands. His whole body burst out with a powerful aura. He pushed his palms. With Satan as the center, countless flames instantly burst out and rolled toward the two bone islands. Wherever the flames went, the already extremely hot magma was evaporated by the powerful aura. The entire sea seemed to be shorter. Satan's movements were extremely fast. The bone island was engulfed in the blink of an eye. In the violent tremor, countless debris burst open. Shinrui was taken aback before he could even make a move. At this moment, the Water Elemental King shook his head at Shinrui, and the debris quickly condensed into the Bone Island. Satan frowned even tighter, not only because of the rebirth of the Bone Island, but also because of the weird rule power. Those who attacked the Bone Island would consume a considerable amount of faith power and vitality. This was the most important basic power of a super powerhouse, even for a pseudogod powerhouse. Split up and attack! Satan originally wanted to defeat the Bone Island in one go, then eliminate Delothro, and win this bet. He didn't expect the power of the Bone Island to be far beyond imagination. It was very difficult to destroy two at the same time, and it would consume a lot of faith power and vitality. He naturally didn't want to let Shinrui reap the benefits from the side. Shinrui knew that the real enemy was still behind. Now he must destroy the Bone Island first, so he immediately flew toward the other Bone Island. Countless purple lights shone, and he had already performed polar transformation on the way. Swift like the wind! As he shouted these 3 words, the speed of the purple light suddenly accelerated, shooting straight toward the Bone Island like lightning. This speed was extremely amazing. Satan glimpsed this scene from the corner of his eyes, and he raised his eyebrows slightly, but his attention soon fell on the front. There, countless crystal lights condensed into a huge hand that was grabbing toward him. Satan snorted coldly and shook his hand. The magma under his feet suddenly trembled, showing countless tiny ripples of high-speed trembling. A powerful shock force spread in the air. The huge hand turned into countless debris under this power and scattered. This was the special ability that Satan had shown with his clone in the UFO land. It was similar to the profound shock of high-frequency weapon. Now that he released it with the power of his main body, the power was more than 100 times stronger. It instantly shattered Delothro's phantom arm. After the shock wave shattered the arm, the remaining power did not stop. It went straight to the Bone Island. A large area of the huge Bone Island immediately collapsed and slowly recovered. This time, the speed of the collapse and recovery was much slower than the previous shattering, and the faith power and vitality of the sucking had also decreased. The reason was very simple. It was because the Bone Island on the other side was attacked by Shinrui at the same time. Lambos nodded secretly. The simultaneous attack of the two had disturbed the balance of the power of the Bone Island to the main altar. Even if the Bone Island could be regenerated, at this speed, it would really collapse soon. Chapter 1072. In the Crimson Double Fang Sea, the 2 Bone Islands were under fierce attacks, and in the center of the magma, a huge figure was also constantly collapsing. This huge body was Delothro's Phantom. Facing 2 enemies, especially Satan, who could easily defeat the Phantom, although it could be reborn continuously, the power of the Phantom was not enough to interfere with the destruction of the Bone Islands. The Bone Islands were still recondensing, but both Shinrui and Satan could feel that the power of rebirth was weakening. In order to achieve this effect, the two also paid a considerable amount of faith power and vitality. With Satan as the main attacker, Shinrui learned the lesson from the last attack on the Bone Islands. He did not rashly use a big move, but mainly used ordinary attacks. As long as it achieved the effect of destruction and weakening, it would be fine. In the face of Delothro's Phantom, Shinrui controlled the rhythm very well. He mainly used guerrilla warfare and tried to avoid direct contact, giving more pressure to Satan on the other side. Although it could be reborn infinitely, after all, there was a gap in strength. Delothro's Phantom could not bring too much resistance to Satan, and it was easily defeated. In fact, Satan also did not use too much power. Both of them knew very well that the real enemy had not yet appeared. The power of the Bone Islands was getting weaker and weaker. Boom, 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 boom. In several loud noises, the Bone Island in front of Satan was blasted into powder and scattered. The Bone Island on the other side was also cut into countless pieces by Shinrui's aura blade. This time, neither of the 2 Bone Islands recovered. They seemed to have been completely destroyed. Delothro's Phantom also collapsed, shattering into crystal chips of the Flower of Abyss and scattering in the air. However, the faces of Chinrui and Satan did not look relaxed at all. Instead, they became more cautious because an extremely terrifying breath suddenly appeared in the space, and it was still spreading and spreading. The magma in the sea began to boil violently, and a terrifying and intense blazing power surged out. With a whoosh sound, the entire sea actually burned and turned into a real sea of fire. Before the flames could get close to Satan, they were blocked by an invisible force field. However, the grave expression on Satan's face didn't diminish in the slightest. This flame was mixed with a special power that was above his expectations. Even with the protection of the kingdom's power, he could still feel the intense burning sensation. In this sea of fire, not only was his strength suppressed, but his energy consumption was also far greater than usual. Compared with Satan, Chenrui was pregnant with his precious daughters. Fire Phoenix Divine Mark. So the fire power of the sea of fire had little effect on him. At this time, the water elemental king on the side immediately exclaimed, "Fire origin! This is the origin of fire fragment!" Chenrui was taken aback. There is actually a fragment of the origin of fire that the fire elemental king or Gemiton can't find in this crimson double fang sea. Now this powerful fire environment was the most dangerous place for the water elemental king. In the blink of an eye, his body had begun to vaporize. Chenrui activated the Tower of Glory without hesitation and kept lambosted into the space. "I didn't expect the origin of fire fragment to be here." Although Lambost entered the space of the Tower of Glory, his voice came from Chenrui's star armor. It was the effect of the water shadow pearl. "Logically, apart from the fire elemental king, I have the strongest sense of fire elements. Not to mention back then, even yesterday, I didn't find the existence of the origin of fire. Delothro must have used some special power to hide the origin of fire, or his real projection has been absorbing and integrating the power of the origin of fire." Chenrui once promised the fire elemental king to find the origin of fire fragment. Although he found it now, the difficulty of obtaining it was far beyond imagination. The surrounding temperature was getting higher and higher. Even Satan began to sweat on his forehead. Two huge flames flew out of the sea of fire, flying towards Satan and Chenrui respectively. The first feeling that this flame gave Chenrui was deterrence. The deterrence contained indescribable ferocity and violence, making people involuntarily have a strange feeling that they couldn't dodge, couldn't parry, couldn't resist, and couldn't be defeated. It felt that all hope was cut off, leaving only despair. This was the special soul power of the Abyss Lord. It was extremely powerful, just like the hatred encountered in the battle of the Elves' Tree of Nature. Chenrui seemed to be deterred by this power, and he lost his ability to adapt. He could only watch the flame approaching, and he was swallowed in an instant. This scene made Satan frown. He also felt the influence of despair. With a cold snort, he drew a circle with his 5 fingers. The flame in front of him quickly stagnated and gradually stopped moving. The two amazing forces were in a stalemate in the air. Everything nearby was repelled, and a huge whirlpool appeared in the sea of fire and magma under his feet. The shape of the flame gradually changed, turning into the shape of a huge palm. On the other side, the flame that swallowed Chenrui also turned into a huge palm, flying towards Satan from behind. Satan pointed his finger at the center of the circle drawn in the air just now and shouted, "Disintegrate!" With that point as the center, the nearby space split and peeled off one after another. The huge palm also split and peeled off. Countless invisible flames fell and were annihilated as if they were tangible objects, but the huge palm seemed to be peeling off only a layer of skin. It was not affected at all. At this moment, another giant palm had already appeared behind Satan. Satan was about to use his strength to attack when he suddenly saw the direction of the giant palm behind him change. It drew an arc in the air, faintly carrying some kind of starlight. It bypassed Satan and actually hit the giant palm in front of him. The two huge palms shook at the same time, and the raging flames quickly spread backward, showing the outline of a huge body more than 10 meters high. Satan glanced at Chenrui, who appeared not far away, and he was slightly surprised. When he saw this, Richard being engulfed by the flames just now, the equality contract in his heart was not eliminated. It could be seen that Richard wasn't dead, or he was hiding. He didn't expect that he had such a special ability that made the palm return and hit him. This was the skill of star diversion. Even the power of someone as strong as Delothro was still transferred back. Satan's surprise only passed by for a moment, and his attention was all focused on the huge body in front of him. This body had become very clear. It was wrapped in raging flames, its eyes were blood red, and its facial features were hideous. The powerful aura it exuded made Satan show a rare look of caution. There was no doubt that this was no longer the previous phantom, but the real projection of Delothro. In the main altar in almost the ultimate state, a powerful projection close to the original body. Race, Power Projection Comprehensive Strength Assessment, SSSS plus Physique, SSSS plus Power, SSSS plus Spirit, SSSS plus Speed, SSSS plus Attribute, Body of Destruction, Flame of Despair, Erosion, Soul-Shattering, Space, Devourer of Faith, Devourer of Life. Danger Level, Extremely Dangerous. Shinrui looked at the data of analytical eyes, and was secretly shocked. Sure enough, the real projection of this Delothro has reached the level of peak pseudogod. Apart from the strange power of despair, just standing here gave Shinrui the same sense of oppression as peak powerhouses such as Michael and Satan. This is just a clone that is close to the real body. If it is the real body, then I don't know how terrifying it will be. According to Lambos, the true bodies of the three juggernauts had yet to reach the realm of gods. However, it was clear that compared to Michael, who claimed to be the person closest to a god, the three juggernauts had surpassed the level of ordinary false gods and were closest to gods. It was conceivable that once some kind of seal collapsed, and the abyss really came to this main plane, what kind of terrifying doomsday would it be? Satan's data was Race, Fallen Angel Comprehensive Strength Assessment, SSSS plus Physique, SSSS plus Power, SSSS plus Spirit, SSSS plus Speed, SSSS plus Attribute, Fallen Body, Divine Seal, Blasphemy, Time, Destruction. Danger Level, Extremely Dangerous. They were both SSSS plus, but Satan gave Shinrei a feeling that he was even more unfathomable than Delothro. The race of the fallen angel reminded Shinrei of the ancient legend of another world. Although he felt that Satan's power had the upper hand, this was the altar of despair, which was also Delothro's home field. In such a battle of similar strength, any outcome could happen. His blood-red eyes met Satan's cold, knife-like eyes. The two gazes seemed to be in a physical confrontation, and the nearby air was about to solidify. Shinrui, who was weak on the side, was selectively ignored by Delothro. In the eyes of a powerhouse, there were only powerhouses of the same level. Either one of them was able to bring Shinrui a strong sense of oppression. Given his current strength, even though his polar transformation had already allowed him to reach semi-divinity realm intermediate stage, there was still a huge gap between intermediate stage and pinnacle semi-divinity realm. This was especially so when the two of them were the strongest pinnacle semi-divinity realm cultivators. Delothro! This world doesn't belong to you, cursed things! Go back! Satan used the language of the abyss, but Shinrei, who had the analytical eyes, understood it very well. He just didn't know what cursed things meant. Delothro's answer was only one word. Die! As soon as he finished speaking, the huge arm with high-temperature steaming flames rushed towards Satan. Satan waved his hand, and the flames suddenly stagnated. Although the body proportion was much smaller, Satan's strength was not inferior to Delothro's at all. The amazing breath surged in the air, and they were in a stalemate for a while. Shinrui on the side was hit by the huge force and was immediately blasted away. Seeing that he couldn't suppress Satan, Delothro suddenly hit the sea of fire with his other arm. Countless flaming magma splashed out, turning into countless fireballs containing a strange breath and flying towards Satan. Not only Satan, but Shinrui was also within the range of the fireballs. Chapter 1073. Satan was waiting with rapt attention when he suddenly heard a voice behind him. Serene! At the same time, Satan felt a familiar power fluctuation, and then he saw the fireball suddenly slowed down. Not only the fireball, but everything except him slowed down. No, in addition to him, there was also the voice behind him. This was the power of time. Satan immediately reacted. Although Satan was shrouded by this power, he was not affected at all. It could be seen that Richard had a subtle control of the power of time. Even Satan, who also had the power of time, was surprised. Shinrei was very clear about his own strength. If he fought head-on, he would be destroyed in an instant. Therefore, he chose the most suitable position, which was to assist. Let Satan be the main attack, and then wait for the opportunity to launch the most fatal blow. Satan's figure flickered, and he had already appeared in a position where the fireball couldn't attack. This kind of large-scale time stop was quite difficult, especially when there was a terrible opponent like Delothro. In the blink of an eye the slow had returned to normal. But it was at this moment that Delothro's attack had already missed. The next second, before Delothro could react, he was hit by a strong force. The figure in the sea of fire retreated hundreds of meters, and the originally blocked space was also broken by this impact. Shinrei's eyes lit up. If the Serene, he just used slowed down the flow of time, then the moment Serene disappeared, Satan's power was to accelerate time, so that the attack hit Delothro in advance, and it was impossible for him to dodge. Both of them had the power of time, and when facing the same enemy, they showed a tacit understanding that surprised even themselves. In fact, the two were still enemies. Satan's blow was quite powerful, and a dent suddenly appeared in Delothro's chest. Delothro seemed to be enraged by this heavy blow, and he let out an angry roar. Shinrei and Satan felt that the loss of vitality and faith power was accelerating rapidly, and their souls were also trembling in this roar that carried a strange power. Shinrei's heart skipped a beat, but he was not intimidated by this roar. He had already put on the God-eating mask and the Furious King armor, which were integrated with the star armor on the surface, so he was not affected by the spiritual erosion. The reason why he was shocked was because he suddenly felt the aura of the Black Dragon Girl. The missing Oliphius was nearby? As the main body of the link, as long as he didn't seal off his senses, he could directly sense the existence of the link within a certain range. But this feeling quickly disappeared. It was obviously disturbed by some kind of space power. Shinrei immediately tried to retrieve Oliphius with the star-sealing platform, but there was no response. But he was very sure that it was not an illusion just now. Oliphius should be imprisoned in a nearby space. Delothro's roar was not just a spiritual erosion. Countless flames flew out of the sea of fire, emitting a strong resonance as if they were amplified by a big horn. When the roar fell into their ears, it turned into some kind of extremely weird seductive sound. Satan felt that the sound seemed to penetrate his spiritual defense and penetrate straight into his soul like hundreds of pairs of invisible tentacles, trying to erode in and control his entire soul and body. Even Satan couldn't help but feel his soul shaking under the roar of the Despair Lord. However, with his extremely powerful soul power, he quickly got rid of this interference. When he came back to his senses, he happened to see the flames flying all over the sky, shuttling around like ghosts. The power brought by them greatly accelerated the loss of faith power and life force. As Satan snorted coldly, he raised his right hand to the sky, spread his 5 fingers, and slowly said, "My body comes from the glowing gem. Under the end of the world, it is still perfect." This sentence was not a poem, but it contained the power of great power. As soon as he finished speaking, the ghost-like flames rolled back one after another, and the strange power of soul control suddenly dissipated. Satan's raised hand exuded a magnificent green light as he walked toward Delothro step by step. Wherever he passed, the rolling magma sea of fire gradually evaporated, and the seawater under his feet became shorter out of thin air. In the entire main altar, the suffocating and oppressive momentum also began to decline. The magnificent green light became stronger and stronger. Satan glimpsed that Richard, who was covered in the armor of faith and even his face was covered by the mask, didn't seem to be affected by the strange soul power, and he was sneaking around Delothro's back from the side like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, the light that Satan held high had turned into countless winding curves and flew toward Delothro. Shinrui saw clearly that those were snakes, like real living creatures. In the blink of an eye, they had turned into dense green ropes, tightly binding Delothro's huge body. Satan's raised 5 fingers gradually clenched, and the green ropes became tighter and tighter. Delothro couldn't move for a while, and the flames on his body quickly dimmed. Shinrui's eyes flashed, and Ing had flashed behind Delothro's head in an instant. This time, he not only teamed up with Satan to deal with Delothro, but he also had a competitive relationship with Satan. It was like 2 players who were fighting for the boss's tail knife. Whoever had the tail knife could get the bound equipment, dropped by the boss. The power of the contract was fair. Both sides could sense who killed Delothro first, so there was no need for outsiders to judge. The original burning flames on his huge body had converged into his body, and the surface was covered with a layer of white armor. Looking closely, it was a huge armor condensed by countless white bones, and the fiery skin inside was faintly visible. Shinrui and Satan suddenly understood. It turned out that the previous Bone Island had never been really destroyed, but it was recondensed on Delothro's body in such a form, which was equivalent to merging with his doppelganger. Its defensive power was stronger and more difficult to completely destroy. What was broken by Nirvana Dimension just now was only the bone armor, and the real body didn't suffer much damage. In this kingdom of the main altar, it could quickly recover. Lowly ant! Delothro roared, and a powerful devouring force emanated from his huge mouth, rapping toward Shinrui. Shinrui felt that his body flew forward involuntarily, and the speed of the kingdom power and vitality suddenly accelerated several times. In fact, the Despair Lord was also taken aback just now. He didn't expect that the neglected little character actually launched such an unexpected and terrifying attack. If it weren't for the protection of the bone armor, perhaps this doppelganger would have suffered a lot of damage. It seemed that this ant couldn't be underestimated. He had to get rid of him as soon as possible to avoid any accidents when he confronted Satan. Suddenly, Shinrui's heart shook again. He felt Oliphius' breath again. Although it was only fleeting, he had already determined the source of the breath. From Delothro's mouth. At this time, Satan's attack arrived in time. Green snakes once again bound Delothro's body. It was not that Satan was kind, but once Shinrui died, then he wouldn't be able to get the source of creation power that he wanted. Shinrui's mind turned quickly. Looking at the huge bloody mouth, he didn't take the opportunity to retreat, but he made up his mind. Swift like the wind! Seeing that Richard didn't retreat but flew into Delothro's huge mouth like lightning, Satan, who coveted the source of creation, couldn't help but change his expression. Chapter 1074. At the moment when Shinrui rushed into Delothro's mouth, he felt a terrifying fire power wrapped around him. It was more than 100 times stronger than the sea of fire outside. Even the power of intermediate-stage pseudo-god would instantly turn into ashes. However, Shinrui was an exception. Because the Fire Phoenix Divine Mark on his body could not only reduce fire damage by 90%, but it also had a 10% chance of complete immunity. It was more powerful than the effect of Glorious Dignity on light power. This was all thanks to the gift from his baby daughter. The characteristic of Star Armor could integrate his original equipment and abilities, so Shinrui also avoided the phenomenon of running naked. Although the greatly reduced fire damage was not completely ineffective, Shinrui only needed to use Star Wing Protection to basically isolate the influence. However, there was another power that he could not be immune to, which was Devour. The life power and faith power all over his body poured out uncontrollably. This was Delothro's terrifying talent of Devour Life and Devour Faith. The weirdest thing was that after rushing into Delothro's body, he didn't see any internal organs. Instead, it was like a high-temperature abyss. His body just fell down in that dim space, and there was no end. This situation was completely different from the feeling of being wrapped in a strange power when he was devoured by the phantom last time. If it was a pseudo-god powerhouse, after a long time, under this terrifying devoured power, the faith and life accumulated by the entire kingdom would be devoured. Finally, the power would be exhausted or the defensive power would be gone, and there would only be a dead end. At this time, the particularity of the galaxy territory, kingdom of Shinrei's supersystem was fully displayed. The vast life power and faith power were almost inexhaustible, and they had been protecting Shinrei. However, if this continued, he would always be in a passive situation. Sooner or later, his power would be exhausted, and it was equivalent to waiting for death. What's more, he could not sense the link with Oliphius all the way down. Shinrei had experienced many battles, and he was no longer the rookie he used to be. From the previous, Nirvana dimension, it could be seen that Delothro's offensive and defensive power was far better than his, but it was not completely unshakable. The almost unsolvable situation in front of him was not really unsolvable. The key was to find the flaws, or to break a certain balance, and create a flaw. Fire-like invasion! After using the ability to increase the power of his attacks, Shinrei's aura blazed. With a wave of his hand, 7 huge balls of light appeared in front of him and exploded in an instant. Although the power of the 7-star burst was strong, the surrounding space did not change at all. Shinrei frowned and once again unleashed a powerful large-scale attack. Polar Star Storm! Countless terrifying starlight streaked across the sky in dazzling arcs of death. A violent starstorm howled and spread through the air, but it was still useless. It was as if countless heavy punches had hit empty air, a waste of energy. Shinrei frowned. Not only did this space have a devouring power, but it also had a strong suppression on power. The power of attacks was much lower than usual, and the consumption of astral power was almost doubled. The most troublesome thing was that the 2 attacks were completely ineffective. At this time, the water shadow pearl in his chest suddenly vibrated, and countless strands of blue light flew out, spreading in all directions. Affected by the power of this blue light, the originally deathly still space immediately began to show all kinds of special patterns. This should be the power of Delothro's abyss space. I can feel that this space is composed of countless moving space layers, constantly changing and overlapping to form an endless cycle. You must find the trajectory of space movement, then attack the weakest joint. However, the effectiveness of the water shadow pearl is limited, so you need to speed up. The water elemental king's voice sounded. This pearl was like Lambost's eyes and ears. It could clearly sense the situation outside. Its texture was also very special, so it did not break because of Delothro's power. Of course, Shinrei's special physique and astral power protection were also a main reason. Shinrei's eyes lit up. Lambost once said that the water shadow pearl had a special restraining effect on Delothro's kingdom, but its power was limited, so it couldn't be completely relied on. When he tried to kill Delothro with Nirvana Dimension, previously, he didn't have the chance to use it. Now it finally played a wonderful role here. Shinrei immediately cast Deep Analytical Eyes. In the deep analytical eyes, the patterns emitted by the water shadow pearl were like some kind of special, developing fluid splashed on an invisible picture. The originally hidden brushwork and colors were suddenly revealed. As Lambo said, the effect of the water shadow pearl was quite limited. The blue light soon began to disappear, but in this short period of time, Shinrei had figured out the rhythm of this space cycle. With a loud shout, the invasion-like power was raised to the peak. The powerful power that had been accumulated in his right arm for a long time burst out. A red light with a strong destructive breath broke through the air. True Red Annihilation. The red light of True Red Annihilation did not divide the space into 2 halves as usual. The red light that went straight suddenly had a strange twist as if a straight line was folded into a lightning mark. In fact, this powerful killer move hit the key part of the space, destroying the originally circulating space power. The twist was the crack formed by the blocking space. Swift like the wind. Chinrui turned into a swift electric light and disappeared into the crack before the space engulfed the barrier of true red annihilation. After passing through layers of barriers, he finally penetrated the originally dead space. Chinrui felt the light in front of him brighten, and the dim void turned into a dazzling blood red. This was a karst cave-like environment which was very huge. It was somewhat similar to the scene Chinrui had encountered in the Nightmare Volcano on the Nightmare Plain in the human world. Although the space was large, the atmosphere was much more depressing and terrifying than there. Chinrui felt Oliphius's linked breath immediately. It was just in front, and it was quite close. Looking ahead, the most conspicuous thing was a huge blood-colored vortex standing in the void. The blood-colored vortex gave Chinrui a sense of extreme danger. On the ground in front of the vortex, there were at least thousands of large and small round red objects. Taking a closer look, they were cocoon-like objects that contained creatures of various shapes and sizes. Only their heads were exposed. Most of these creatures were alive, and their bodies radiated an incredibly intense emotional power, despair. The black dragon chick's linked breath came from it. Chinrui's figure rose and fell at high speed, and he had found a blood cocoon following the breath. Sure enough, the black dragon chick was imprisoned in it. Her black eyes seemed to have lost focus as she stared blankly at the vortex in front of her. "Oliphius!" Chinrui shouted. The black dragon chick still didn't respond. Her face was dull like a walking corpse. At this time, the water shadow pearl on Chinrui's chest once again emitted blue ripples that shone on Oliphius's face. Gradually, the black dragon chick's eyes finally regained some vitality. "Boss!" Oliphius saw Chinrui at first glance, and her weak voice was filled with strong surprise. "Where are Adeline and the others?" "I don't know." The black dragon chick suddenly thought of something. She showed an extremely horrified expression and cried out, "Vasilna! Vasilna is eaten! Go save Adeline and the others." "Eaten?" Chinrui frowned. He saw that the black dragon chick had reached a point of extreme exhaustion both mentally and physically, so he didn't ask any more. "Don't worry, I'll go find Adeline and the others. You have a good sleep. You will be fine when you wake up." With that said, Chinrui used the strange power of the star-sealing platform. Oliphius suddenly disappeared in the blood cocoon, and she was taken into the super system to enter the fusion state. The longest time limit of this fusion state is 3 days. It can effectively heal mental and physical injuries. I believe that after the black dragon chick wakes up from the fusion state, she should be able to recover. The question now is, are Adeline, Helen, and Lolly still alive? Chinrui began to search quickly in the blood cocoon. At this moment, the vortex in front of him suddenly wriggled like some kind of digestive organ, emitting a powerful devouring force. Nearly 100 blood cocoons near it suddenly left the ground and flew toward the vortex. An idea flashed in Chinrui's mind. He finally understood what Oliphius meant by "Vasilna is eaten." This vortex should be equivalent to some kind of sacrificial altar. Oliphius and others should have broken into the main altar for treasure hunting, then they were captured and imprisoned by Delothro in this sacrificial space as sacrifices. Every once in a while, the vortex would automatically devour a certain number of blood cocoons to complete a certain sacrificial ritual. The reason why Vasilna's spiritual link disappeared should be that she was unlucky. She was devoured and died before Chinrui could find this place. But then again, if it weren't for the disappearance of Vasilna's spiritual link, Chinrui wouldn't know that something happened to the treasure hunting team on the Dead Sea. Chinrui's gaze stagnated because he suddenly saw 2 smaller blood cocoons among the flying offerings. They were 2 familiar faces, Helen and Lala Arya. "Suruling!" The speed of the blood cocoons flying toward the vortex suddenly slowed down, and everything around them became slow. At this moment, Chinrui had already appeared in front of the vortex and grabbed 2 blood cocoons one after another. It really was Helen and Lolly. In the blink of an eye, the vortex returned to its original speed, swallowing all the blood cocoons. Shinrei had already appeared in the distance with the 2 blood cocoons that were taken away. He was panting heavily. Since activating the polar star transformation, until now, he had consumed a lot of star power. When he activated the time power again just now, there was a feeling of powerlessness. Neither of these 2 women had gone through 1 star strengthening. Even if they could be temporarily sealed, they couldn't be kept into the star sealing platform like Oliphius. They could only use the Tower of Glory. But that kind of blood cocoon had powerful abyssal power, so it couldn't be directly kept into the Tower of Glory. The blood cocoon must be removed first. Chapter 1075. Shinrei tried a few more times and found that the realm of spring, which contained the power of creation, had a special melting effect on the blood cocoon. At this time, under the blue light of the water shadow pearl, the flat lowly and the little mermaid princess recovered from the original sluggishness one after another. "It's you! You saved us just now!" Lala's strength was demigod, so she woke up the fastest. She knew very well that it was Shinrei who saved her and Helen at the critical moment just now. Obviously, unlike Oliphius, her consciousness was in a half-awake and half-fuzzy state. "Vasilna is dead! Hurry up and save Oliphius and Adeline!" The flat lowly was very experienced, and she immediately explained the situation in the shortest sentence. "Oliphius is fine. Where is Adeline? I remember that her position seemed to be behind Oliphius at the beginning." As they were talking, Helen also woke up. "Shinrei!" At this moment, a warning sign suddenly appeared in Shinrei's heart. At the same time, Helen and Lala exclaimed, "Be careful!" The huge vortex had changed into a hideous face. The blood-red eyes showed a chilling gaze, and it firmly locked on Shinrei. Before Shinrei had time to react, he felt a terrifying soul power wave impact him. He felt as if his mind was pierced by a sharp awl. The indescribable pain instantly spread throughout his entire soul, and all his consciousness almost shattered. Huge pressure expanded from inside and outside. With a click, the star armor on his body actually cracked. Soul-shattering. Delothro's talent power. The strength of this soul shock was several times stronger than the last time Delothro's phantom launched. Shinrei was caught off guard, and he was hit head-on. He was severely injured immediately. If it weren't for Delothro being distracted to fight Satan on the other hand, perhaps the power would be more than this. However, after launching this blow, the face immediately produced a violent shock like a wave as if it was hit by a strong impact. This was the punishment feature of the super system. There was a chance to reflect all damage received. The activation rate of the purple star level was about 50%, and the strength of the rebound was 50% to 80% of the power of the attack. The power of the soul shattering was reflected, which was far beyond Delothro's expectation. The effect of this blow was stronger than being directly attacked by Shinrei. His consciousness lost the ability to react for a while. Most of Delothro's will was in the battle with Satan. This accident caused his body's movements to stagnate. Of course, his enemy would not give up this good opportunity. A powerful collapse was launched, and Delothro's bone armor was shattered. Satan was very experienced and immediately used the power of time. Without waiting for the bone armor to recover, another cut burst out. This blow was very deadly, and Delothro couldn't dodge it. His lava-like left arm was cut off, and the broken arm turned into countless broken pieces. When the bone armor recondensed, the broken arm still didn't recover. It just reassembled bit by bit at a very slow speed. Being hit internally and externally at the same time, Delothro suffered a lot of damage, and his breath finally began to decline. At this moment, Shinrei had barely woken up from the heavy blow to his soul. He felt that his mouth and nose were full of blood. Fortunately, Delothro was also injured at this time and had no time to chase after him. Helen looked at the blood flowing out of his mouth and nose and was momentarily shocked speechless. "Leave now!" Although Lala Leah usually liked to cause trouble, she was a person who could distinguish between kindness and grudges. Shinrei had already done his best by coming here to save them. She must not drag him into death with her. Don't worry. Shenrui took a deep breath and suppressed his injury with astral power. I'll get you out of here! The giant face in the vortex roared angrily, and its face began to change. Long horns grew on its forehead, and its appearance became more and more ferocious and terrifying. The sense of oppression in the space suddenly increased several times. At the same time, Delothro, who was in front of Satan, also changed. His huge body shrank rapidly, turning into a terrifying 2-meter-tall skeleton with bone spurs all over his body. There was also a long tail behind him, and his whole body exuded heat and blood. This should be the true form of the Lord of the Abyss. Although his body shrank, his momentum was much stronger than the original giant. The regeneration of the arm was also speeding up, and it returned to its original size in the blink of an eye. However, after the change, the breadth of the entire blood sea dropped significantly, and the magma dropped by about 2/3. It seemed that this transformation consumed a lot of energy from the main altar. No wonder Delothro had not used it before. Satan narrowed his eyes and saw that Delothro had already appeared in front of him like lightning. Delothro's claws were much faster than before, and Satan's hands were red and dazzling like red-hot metal. Satan reacted quickly, and his hands met the claws. Delothro's hands were as red and dazzling as red-hot metal, while Satan's hands were gray and mysterious. Under the confrontation of the two forces, the whole sea was shaking violently. Satan just wanted to increase his strength, but he suddenly had a warning sign. Before he could react, his face had been hit, and he was knocked away. It turned out to be Delothro's tail, which was as flexible as his arms. After Delothro knocked Satan away, he waved his claws continuously, and hundreds of high-temperature flames containing the breath of despair chased after him like a meteor shower. The meteor shower surrounded Satan's figure and burned him fiercely. Delothro did not stop there. He put his arms together, and the nearby space turned over, surrounding the burning core. His sharp claws shook, and the space and flames shattered like glass. A figure flew out from it, seeming to be seriously injured. Delothro's figure flickered, and he caught up with the figure that was flying backward in the air. He wanted to launch a fatal blow, but he felt a pair of cold eyes in the sky in front of him. The eyes had some kind of special power, and he couldn't help but stop. When Delothro quickly reacted, he found that the eyes in the sky had disappeared. It seemed to be just an illusion, but the sense of crisis of being locked on was still there. On Satan's face, there was a pair of eyes that had the same feeling, and they were looking at him coldly. At this time, Satan already had a black armor on his body, and his whole body seemed to be dark, cold, and gloomy. In the next second, Delothro's shoulder was clasped by a hand, and then he flew into the air involuntarily under a huge force. Before he could stabilize his body, the pair of cold eyes appeared below again, and a punch hit his abdomen. This blow had some kind of penetrating power. Although there was only a shallow fist mark on his abdomen, the bone armor on his back burst open. Delothro grunted and subconsciously waved his claws, but Satan grabbed his claws and shook them, and he lost his balance and flew out again. Satan did not chase after him this time. He waved his hand, and black lightning covered Delothro. Then, countless explosions sounded, and the terrible power completely drowned Delothro in an instant. Satan saw clearly that Delothro curled his body into a ball, and the bone armor on his body's surface was constantly thickening, looking like a big ball. This bone armor had integrated the power of the entire main altar. Although the black lightning completely suppressed it, it could not be broken for a while. As long as this most troublesome bone armor was broken and the guardian power of the main altar was completely destroyed, Satan was confident that he could kill Delothro in the shortest time. At the same time, in Delothro's body, Delothro's huge face let out a terrible roar, and waves of soul shock that were far stronger than before surged toward Shenrui from all directions. Satan's power was extremely tyrannical, and he was Delothro's #1 enemy. Therefore, he must first get rid of Shenrui, the hidden danger, before he could concentrate on fighting Satan. Facing the terrible soul-shattering power, Shenrui still did not move. He quickly used the power of creation to dispel the blood cocoon. The soul shock had already arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye, but it stopped about 5 meters in front of Chinrui and could no longer break through. This was the ability of the Holy Light Robe, Absolute Barrier. It could create a protective force field with a diameter of 5 meters, which could defend against any form or strength of attack. However, it could only last for 10 seconds, and it could not be moved. 10 seconds passed in the blink of an eye, but there was still one last point of the blood cocoon that had not been eliminated. This time, it was not like the single attack just now, but an area attack. If he used mirror form or demonic flies at this time, then he could survive, but Helen and Lilia would definitely be turned into ashes under this attack. Immovable mountain! Facing the terrifying soul attack, Chinrui gritted his teeth and let out a low shout. The surrounding space immediately solidified, forming a barrier. This was the defensive power that he combined with the Tower of Glory to display. If it was an ordinary attack, it could be blocked and diverted by a movable mountain, but Delothro was much stronger than him, and he also had the talent of space. The entire solidified space trembled violently. Countless cracks appeared, but it did not break immediately. Chinrui was already severely injured. This time, not only his mouth and nose, but also his eyes and ears were overflowing with blood. Fortunately, with this delay, the blood cocoon on Lilia and Helen had completely melted. With a flash of light, the two women had been taken into the Tower of Glory. Almost at the next moment, the protective space of immovable mountain completely shattered. Under the terrifying soul shock, Chinrui's body was torn apart. In fact, he split into countless scattered flies. He escaped this blow with the ability of the God-eating mask. The flies flew toward those blood cocoons. According to Lilia, Adeline was still behind Oliphius. That position was very far behind. Logically speaking, she should not have been devoured yet. After locking the approximate range, Chinrui finally found the blood cocoon that imprisoned Adeline. At this time, the time for demonic fly's transformation was up, and his body returned to human form. Before he could stand firm, Delothro's soul shock arrived again. This time, countless soul shocks merged into one and attacked with unprecedented power. Chinrui's body immediately became transparent. This powerful soul shock seemed to have encountered the light of a mirror and was reflected back. Mirror form. The damage caused by this reflection was several times stronger than the previous rebound. As Delothro roared, his facial features blurred, and he returned to the original vortex shape. Chapter 1076. At this time, Chinrui had found the location of Adeline's blood cocoon. The light from the pearl of water shadow made the Naga girl gradually regain consciousness. When she saw Chinrui's appearance, she was surprised. But when she saw the blood on Chinrui's facial features and the cracks on his armor, her surprise suddenly turned into nervousness. Chinrui was about to run the power of creation, and the vortex suddenly emitted a dazzling bloody light. The temperature in the air began to rise rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had reached an extremely terrifying level. If it weren't for Chinrui using his power to protect Adeline in time, the Naga girl would have turned into ashes. The vortex began to move. Its size was constantly expanding, and the devouring power suddenly increased by dozens of times. All the blood cocoons were sucked in. It seemed that the rebound and reflection abilities displayed by Chinrui finally made Delothro wary, so he changed to another method to launch an attack. Little did he know that Chinrui could no longer use the skill of mirror body. However, not only was his soul severely damaged, but he also consumed a lot of star power. His situation was quite bad. The pearl of water shadow emitted a blue light in time, revealing the gap nodes in the space. Chinrui kept moving with Adeline's blood cocoon, using the special nodes to dodge the devouring power. At the same time, he cast the power of creation to melt the blood cocoon. However, this space was Delothro's kingdom. In the blink of an eye, the expanding vortex sealed his angle. It would take at least a minute for the blood cocoon to melt completely. Judging from the approaching vortex, it was too late. Unless he abandoned Adeline and left with the Stargate, immediately, he would be devoured. Chinrui. Adeline had a very special sensing talent, so she keenly sensed this danger. Adeline, I know what you want to say. Chinrui shook his head and increased the output of the power of creation to the blood cocoon. Remember the time at the Black Sea? At that time, I didn't give up on you, let alone now. Adeline bit her lip and nodded. Tears welled up in her eyes. She tried hard not to cry out lest she distracted him. Looking at the rapidly approaching whirlpool and feeling the terrifying tearing and devouring power, Chinrui's heart seemed unusually calm for some reason. Lambost, I want to ask, what will happen if I enter this whirlpool? Lambost's voice came from the pearl of water shadow. Everything you have will be devoured, faith, life, soul. If this guy devours my power of faith and life force, will I be able to digest them for my own use? Delothro is just a doppelganger, and the power that he can use is limited. Then, is there a limit to his devouring? Definitely. Lambost had already guessed what Chinrui wanted to do. He was taken aback. This idea is very stupid and crazy. Are you sure you are not? It seems that it's too late to be sure. The huge devouring force had already wrapped Chinrui. At the same time, Chinrui's body shone with purple light, showing the appearance of the stars of the universe. The surrounding power gathered in the two pairs of star wings, wrapping him and Adeline. In the main altar sea area, the black lightning became more and more violent. The bone ball, wrapping Delothro, was already fragmented. It wouldn't take long for the protection of the entire main altar to be completely defeated. Without the protection of the main altar, it would be much easier to destroy the doppelganger of the Despair Lord. Richard must have wanted to take a risk when he rushed into Delothro's body, but judging from the strength of Delothro's transformation later, Richard had no chance. Fortunately, the contract still hadn't disappeared. Richard should still be alive, and it was very likely that he was imprisoned by Delothro in a certain space. As long as he killed Delothro, he could rescue Richard. This rescue was naturally to obtain the creation source. According to the terms of the bet, after obtaining the creation source, the time of 3 months remained the same. After more than a month, he would kill Richard to eradicate the biggest stumbling block of the Darkness Temple's plan. It could be said to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. At this moment, the bone ball suddenly shook, and the lightning was repelled. Immediately afterward, the bone ball gradually expanded. Satan only thought that Delothro still had some last trick to struggle before death, so he quickly waited with rapt attention. However, the swollen bone ball gradually began to shrink again. Before it shrank back to its original state, it suddenly expanded again. The magnitude was even larger than before. Boom! The bone ball wrapping Delothro actually shattered by itself, revealing the lava-like body inside. What was even more amazing was that the expansion did not stop. Delothro's body constantly distorted uncontrollably, like a balloon that was constantly being inflated and deflated. His power aura also became chaotic. Oh no! Satan suddenly thought of Chinrui, who had rushed into Delothro's mouth, and his face suddenly changed. Satan, who had come to his senses, waved his hands continuously without hesitation. Special symbols that looked like snake patterns gradually became clearer as he waved them. His cold eyes also began to change, becoming vertical pupils like those of a snake or a giant dragon. The heat of the entire main altar was replaced by a kind of cold aura, and the undulating and boiling magma quickly solidified. It was not frozen, but another kind of strange blue crystal, like a gem, emitting crystal light. Delothro's body had expanded to an extremely amazing degree. Obviously, he was desperately trying to suppress it, but he still couldn't succeed. Satan's eyes flashed, and the speed of his strokes became faster and faster. His hands turned into a blurry shadow, and the snake pattern symbols flashed and disappeared, appearing on Delothro's body like countless words. The lava-like body of the Lord of Despair quickly solidified into a crystal shape like boiling magma, and Satan's face was also covered with a layer of crystal blue light. The solidified light was like a mask. The sin of blasphemy! Satan stopped waving his hands at high speed. He clenched his fingers, and a powerful force burst out. Those snake patterns suddenly sank into Delothro's body like blue cracks. In the next second, these patterns became real cracks, and Delothro's entire body cracked. Fine cracks also appeared on the corners of Satan's eyes. This move was extremely powerful, but he also had to pay a considerable price. Originally, he thought that the strength of Richard was not enough to win, so he had been fighting steadily and surely. Unexpectedly, there was a sudden change now, and he could no longer hold back. Almost at the same time that Delothro's body cracked, the clone of the Lord of Despair let out an earth-shattering roar, and a strong purple light suddenly flashed in his eyes and mouth. The bodies that were split by the sin of blasphemy also burst out this incomparably bright purple starlight, and it instantly spread. There were two large areas in the starlight that were particularly eye-catching. The large and small stars in these areas formed a pattern that represented a certain meaning. One was like a phoenix spreading its wings, and the other was like a rainbow hanging high in the sky. Under the combination of internal and external forces, Delothro's body could no longer bear it, and the cracked pieces instantly turned into nothingness, completely annihilated. There was a faint angry roar in the air. It won't take long. As soon as Delothro disappeared, the red clouds in the sky quickly dissipated, and the suffocating heat nearby also disappeared, leaving only the kind of cold that sealed everything. When Satan used the sin of blasphemy, the solidified blue light on his face gradually disappeared, and the cracks at the corners of his eyes turned into traces of blood, quickly disappearing into his skin. In midair, a figure fell on the solidified sea, half kneeling, gasping for breath. The original starlight around him had disappeared without a trace, and the aura of a fake god had also become that of a demigod. A large number of blood stains that had not dried up could be seen on his face, as well as countless shocking wounds on his body. Satan's eyes looked particularly cold, but he finally nodded. "You win." The judgment of the contract was the most fair. Although Satan's reaction was very fast, and he immediately used a fierce killing move to crush Delothro, the real fatal blow was the purple starlight attack launched by Delothro from inside. This result was unimaginable for Satan. This Richard was simply incredible. Obviously, he was much weaker than him, but he actually killed Delothro's clone before him. Chenrei gasped and stood up. When he was about to speak, he felt a tightness in his chest. He coughed a few times and had already choked blood. With this shock, his ears and nose began to bleed again. Chenrei casually wiped it with his hand, and Satan said coldly, "Who are you?" "It's written clearly in the contract, Richard." Chenrei smiled. "Although you try to hide it, I can still feel that special power." Satan's eyes became sharper. "Not only does it have the source of creation, but it also has the almost perfect destruction." Chenrei's heart skipped a beat. Satan actually noticed the source of destruction? Then the secret of the silver box. Satan clearly felt Chenrei's emotional fluctuations, and he was more certain in his heart. "When you launched that triangular attack, you actually merged creation and destruction into one. Although the power is still very weak now, I have only seen this form of attack from one person. No wonder when we signed the contract, I felt that the power in your soul was extremely special." As he spoke, Satan's eyes fell on the pearl of water shadow hanging on Chenrei's chest. "Moreover, the water elemental unveil actually gave you the water elemental heart." Humph. Chenrei was shocked and finally understood. The elemental heart. The pearl of water shadow was actually the elemental heart. "No matter what, I lost the bet." Satan shook his head. "It turns out that I really guessed wrong. You are indeed an old friend. It's really surprising. I didn't expect you to be able to reappear in front of me in this way. Then let me see to what extent you can recover in 10 years. Old friend?" Chenrei was surprised for a while. It seemed that Satan did not think of the matter of the silver box, but seemed to have misunderstood something? However, Chenrei would certainly not explain. This kind of misunderstanding was definitely more beneficial than harmful to him now. Everything that stands in front of me will be destroyed, even you are no exception. Satan raised a finger. Your life and soul will be the best sacrifice for me to set foot on the peak. I look forward to the moment when I personally end you 10 years later. That feeling may be more wonderful than ending the whole world. As he spoke, Satan's figure gradually faded away, and the solidified crystal under Chenre's feet also began to melt. Due to the annihilation of Delothro and the main altar, the red clouds and magma disappeared, and the surrounding area returned to normal. Suddenly, Chenre felt something and was surprised to take down the pearl of water shadow hanging on his chest. An eye-catching crack appeared on the smooth and round blue pearl. The water elemental heart cracked. Chapter 1077. Chenre was shocked. He had experienced the battle in Mountain Shillong, so he knew very well what this water shadow pearl meant to Lambost. The elemental heart was the core of the elemental king, which was equivalent to the human heart. Once the elemental heart was broken, even the powerful elemental king would be completely annihilated within 7 days. Although the elemental king of this main plane would not really die, it would take tens of thousands of years or even longer for a new water elemental king to be born. From the moment Lambost accompanied him to the double Red Fang Sea, Chenre had already regarded this water elemental king as a true friend in his heart. Since Lambost deliberately cast some kind of shielding power, he never knew that this water shadow pearl was the water elemental heart. At the moment when he was engulfed by the vortex transformed by Delothro, Chenre, who was wrapped in star wing protection, finally completely removed Adeline's blood cocoon and successfully kept the Naga girl in the Tower of Glory. Under absolute power, there was no fluke. In fact, even without Adeline, he had to face this real test. Immediately afterward, what greeted him was a terrifying battle. Endless engulfment, endless outburst, endless despair, and endless soul splitting. He almost exhausted all his strength. So far, he still couldn't accurately describe the battle situation in words. He only remembered that when he was on the verge of collapse many times, he relied on the power of Water Shadow Pearl to protect the last bit of consciousness. At this life and death juncture where the soul was on the verge of dissipating, many feelings disappeared, leaving only instincts. It was under the drive of instincts that the failed idea of trying to build an ultimate move with the power of constellation actually became clear. The guidance of Water Shadow Pearl also played a key role. The galaxy territory, power that was integrated with the power of constellation, surged out like a surging sea, becoming the last straw that broke the camel's back. Delothro was like a balloon that was about to burst. After being pierced by this fatal needle by Chenre, it finally burst. Although Satan's reaction was fast, his action was half a beat slower after all. Chenre snatched this tail knife and became the loser of the bet. In all fairness, Satan's strength was indeed higher than Delothro's clone, but it was not that he was stupid to not use his ultimate move. Because with the protection power of the main altar, he couldn't really destroy Delothro's body even if he used all his strength. Even the two, collapse and cut, that cut off Delothro's arm were seized when Chenre entered Delothro's body to interfere. Satan's excessive contempt for Chenre was also one of the reasons for his failure. No wonder he had this mentality, because the absolute strength was there. Neither Satan nor Delothro could be defeated by Chenre. However, it was this small character who was despised who became the final winner. If it weren't for Chenre's outburst in Delothro's body, causing the protective bone armor to completely collapse due to absorbing the undigested power, Satan's sin of blasphemy would not be able to kill Delothro in one blow. Chenre was able to inconceivably defeat the strong with the weak and kill Delothro. It could be said that the Pearl of Water Shadow, which was the water elemental King Lambost, was the greatest contributor. However, this water elemental heart actually cracked now. Chenre barely channeled his power to float on the sea. With a flash of light, he had released the water elemental king and others from the space of the Tower of Glory. It seems that Delothro's clone and the main altar have really been annihilated. The water shadow pearl actually cracked long ago. From that moment on, Lambos, who was in the Tower of Glory, could no longer perceive the outside world. It was not until he came out that he sensed that all the surrounding water elements had returned to normal. As Lambos spoke, the elemental heart turned into a blue light and went into his body. Then the sea surface under everyone's feet began to freeze quickly. In the blink of an eye, an ice island with a radius of about 50 meters with Lambos as the center appeared in sight. Lambos' body also slowly froze, starting from his feet. The solidification spread upward at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although he didn't understand what this change meant, Chinrui clearly felt that Lambos' breath was rapidly weakening. He was sad and anxious. His injury was extremely serious. For a moment, he felt that the world was spinning, and his facial features began to bleed again. Lambos said calmly, "The damage to your soul is quite serious. Even the power of the container can't. I won't die yet." Chinrui forcibly suppressed his injury and stared into Lambos' eyes. "But you're going to die. Even if the annihilation of the elements is just a form of energy conversion, the Lambos I know will no longer exist. I never thought that someone would actually feel sad for an existence like me." Lambos shook his head. "You don't have to mind it. In fact, it has nothing to do with you. If it were any elemental king, they would make the same choice as me when facing enemies like them." Lambos. Chinrui suddenly thought of something and quickly took out a handful of strange fruits from the storage. "I once helped Moore repair the Earth Elemental Heart. I still have Requiem Fruit and Earth Source. Can this help your Elemental Heart recover?" "Requiem Fruit?" Lambos looked surprised. "I didn't expect you to have this kind of thing. What's even more unexpected is that you helped Moore repair his Elemental Heart. No wonder you have such a deep friendship. You can imagine how much effort it took for you to get these two things. However, the reason why I gave you the Elemental Heart previously was just to use you to seal." "Cut the crap!" Chinrui yelled and interrupted Lambos' words rudely, but it affected the wounds on his body. He gritted his teeth in pain. "I just want to know if these two things are useful to you. Although I'm suspicious and I'm pretentious as you think in your heart, I still don't want to be annihilated like this." This tone made Lambos laugh. The Requiem Fruit automatically left Chinrui's hand and turned into a juice that seeped into this small ice island. The Requiem Fruit is really magical. In my elemental heart, the soul that is about to dissipate has begun to reassemble. However, I'm not the Earth Elemental King, so the Earth Source has no effect on me. I need a liquid from the Phantom Ice Spring to repair the cracks in the elemental heart. Unfortunately, I don't even know where the Phantom Ice Spring is. As long as it exists in this world, there must be a way to find it. How long can you last with the Requiem Fruit alone? According to the time, the rupture of Moore's elemental heart should be before he came to the Aquamarine Palace to accept the Earth imprint. At that time, he couldn't even sense the water origin fragment. In other words, he was only the Earth Elemental King at that time, but not the Earth Elemental Envoy. There were many abilities that he couldn't use. As for my current situation, the effect of the Requiem Fruit just now is very obvious. If you can still use the ultimate light healing power like last time, I can probably last about 5 years in this sea with extremely rich water elements. Chinrui secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although 5 years was not a long time, at least Lambos would not be in danger of annihilation now. The crown of thorns immediately appeared on his head, and he cast the Divine Healing Technique. Under the effect of the Divine Healing Technique, Lambos' declining breath gradually stabilized. Not only Lambos and Chinrui, but the injuries of Lolly, Helen, and Adeline also recovered quickly. Lambos, within 5 years, I will definitely bring the Phantom Ice Spring here to find you. Lambos heard the determination in this sentence. Contrary to his previous verbosity, he just looked at Chinrui silently, letting the freezing gradually cover his head. The light in his eyes gradually extinguished, and he turned into a complete ice sculpture. At this time, the light of the Divine Healing Technique also disappeared. Chinrui suddenly felt a strong dizziness. His almost shattered soul seemed to be about to break out of his body. Although the power of the crown of thorns was very strong, it had its own limit after all. The divine healing technique was not omnipotent. This time, the injuries Chunrei suffered were extremely serious. Forget about the external injuries, it had been completely stabilized under the effect of the divine healing technique. It was only a matter of time before he recovered. However, the damage to his soul was beyond the extent that the divine healing technique could heal. In the end, he was fighting head-on in the space inside Delothro's body. It could be said that he was on the verge of life and death. He didn't know how many times he suffered the terrifying impact of the soul shattering. If it weren't for the protection of the water elemental heart, he almost couldn't withstand it. Now that he won with difficulty and stabilized Lambos's situation, his tense nerves finally relaxed. This relaxation didn't matter, but his will to persist under the heavy pressure immediately lost the power to support. In the exclamation of the three women, he could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. Lolly was the strongest. Under the treatment of the divine healing technique, her injuries had basically recovered, but her physical strength and spirit had not recovered yet. Her reaction was extremely fast. She appeared in front of Chunrei in an instant, and caught the fallen body. Since the current flat lowly form was too short, she could only carry him and slowly put him to the ground. This guy fainted, but his situation seems to be very bad. Lolly frowned. Let me see. Adeline hurriedly walked over. She gently pressed her hands on Chunrei's temples and began to sense. The Naga girl was born with a very keen perception talent. Especially after obtaining the Mirage's illusion power back then, her perception of the soul had reached a higher level. After only sensing for a moment, Adeline's face changed. Not good, his soul is on the verge of collapse. Lolly, find a way to save him. I have no other way. I can only take him to the Dragon Island and see if Dad can do anything, but the Dragon Island is very far from here. I'm afraid he can't hold on until then. Adeline was shocked. She covered her face and cried. It's all my fault. If he didn't save me, not only you. Lolly thought of the situation where Chunrei risked his life to save her and Helen previously, and her expression was a little complicated. I also owe him a life. Helen had been silent. She just looked at the sky as if she was recalling something. There was a hint of gentleness in her golden eyes. Such a bad man. The little mermaid princess finally sighed softly and slowly came to Chunrei's side. A melodious and moving song sounded. The golden crystal on the little mermaid princess' forehead began to flash with dazzling brilliance, illuminating the eyes of Lolly and Adeline. Adeline, who was also of the sea creature clan, suddenly thought of the most cherished thing of the siren tribe, and a word emerged in her mind. Chapter 1078. Chunrei slowly opened his heavy eyes, and his blurry vision gradually became clear. His first reaction was a headache, but his second reaction was surprise. Because his soul power was more than twice as strong as before, Chunrei clearly felt that not only his soul, but his spirit power also seemed to have some kind of sublimation and became purer. The reason why he had a headache was not because of some hidden illness, but because he had not fully adapted to this new soul power. This is obviously not an effect that ordinary training can achieve. How can this be? In the previous battle with Delacero, my soul suffered a huge injury, and even the healing power of the crown of thorns can't heal it. I didn't expect my strength to advance instead of retreating. It actually has such an improvement. The strange thing is that I'm clearly still the Purple Pole Star Emperor. I haven't advanced. You're awake? Adeline's voice sounded. Her senses were very sharp. Although she fell asleep on the bed just now, she immediately noticed it as soon as Chunrei woke up. Adeline. Chunrei rubbed his temples and looked at the somewhat familiar house. Where is this? How long have I slept? This is Thundersnake Island, the Naga tribe's residence. We just returned here yesterday, but it's been 10 days since you fell asleep. 10 days? Chunrei didn't expect to sleep for so long. Are you okay? I'm fine. Adeline's eyes were a little red. It's all my fault. Chinray interrupted the Naga girl's words. Burden is not a word suitable for us. If you go back and say this, even Athena will be angry. Besides, the Abyss Lord is my biggest enemy. Okay, let's not talk about this. Where are Helen and Lala Aria? Lala Aria is a little tired. She has been taking us on a fast journey these few days. Oliphius suddenly appeared beside you on the third day, which shocked us. As for Helen, Chinray knew that Oliphius' sudden appearance was because the fusion time limit of the star-sealing platform had reached, and it automatically separated. The black dragon chick should be fine, so he asked casually. How is Helen? Adeline hesitated a little. She went back to the soul-singing sea of the Siren tribe. Chinray's head was still a little heavy, so he didn't notice Adeline's hesitation. He smiled and said, You have been guarding me by the bed. I'm fine now. You should go and rest quickly. Otherwise, you won't be pretty if you have dark circles under your eyes. Adeline blushed. She still wanted to say something, but Chinray pressed his temple. My head still hurts a little. I want to recuperate in peace. You go to sleep for a while first. If there's anything, we'll talk after you have a good sleep. Yes. The Naga girl did not want to disturb his rest, so she quickly stood up and walked out. Since they were able to return here, it seemed that everyone was fine. It was just a pity that Vasilna died. Chinray took a deep breath, calmed down, and entered the super system. Although this battle was extremely dangerous, he still won in the end. This victory was not only the battle with Delothro, but also the bet with Satan. He won another 10 years. However, Satan seemed to have misunderstood and regarded him as a real, old friend, and it seemed that it was an old friend, with strong competitiveness. In any case, this difficulty was temporarily past. Since he won the bet with Satan, he had to find another person to fulfill his promise. In the super system, the galaxy territory was as vast and bright as ever. Chinray could sense that due to the improvement of his entire soul, the power of the galaxy territory had also undergone some corresponding changes. He believed that with future training, the specific benefits would be reflected step by step. Chinray's mind moved slightly, and he appeared in front of Ben Hong. Ben Hong was a special existence in the galaxy territory. As the spiritual link of the master-slave contract, Chinray gave her the ability to travel freely in the universe, but that was all. She couldn't reach any planet in the galaxy divinity in an instant like an oracle like Veronica, let alone see or enter the galaxy divinity temple. If she wanted to reach a planet, she must rely on her own strength to fly. The universe was so big, and the distance between planets was quite large. Even with the speed of pseudo-god, without restrictions in breathing, eating, or physical strength, it was equivalent to an extremely long journey. Chinray's sudden appearance seemed to surprise Ben Hong slightly. She looked at him for a moment and said, It's really unbelievable. Unbelievable? Chinray heard the hidden meaning in these words, so he asked. What I mean by unbelievable is your luck. Ben Hong said faintly. I was in a good mood at first because at that time, the faith power and life power of this universe were rapidly fading. I could even feel through my talent ability that your soul power was rapidly weakening on the other side of the contract power. It was on the verge of collapse. If your soul collapsed, maybe I could leave this strange universe. This was a godsend opportunity. Unfortunately, my good mood was gone immediately. Soon after, your soul returned to normal again, and it was greatly strengthened. This is definitely not caused by your own power. It should be the effect of some kind of special external force. That's why I said that your luck is unbelievable. External force? Chinray frowned. Lambost has been frozen. In that case, only Lala Aria, Adeline, and Helen can provide external force to help him recover his soul. Who is it? What power did they use? Since you can cultivate to this level, you should understand that luck is also a part of strength. Chinray didn't entangle too much with Ben Hong in this aspect. He went straight to the point and asked, You once said that the value you give yourself is those two conditions. First, I collected all 7 artifacts. Second, I won against Satan. Now the 2 conditions have been completed. Did I hear it wrong? Ben Hong showed a contemptuous look and interrupted. You won against Satan? This time, the enemy I am facing is Delothro's clone that is close to the real body and the altar of despair. I can't fight against them alone. I invited you to fight before, but you refused, so I found Satan. Satan agreed to fight? Shinrei spread his hands. In the face of interests, there are no absolute enemies. Satan and I successfully formed an alliance. However, this ally coveted the power of creation in me, so he proposed an additional bet. Whoever kills Delothro first will win the battle of 3 months in advance. In the end, I was lucky enough to kill Delothro's clone and won the bet. I made an agreement with Satan to fight again after 10 years. What you sensed before, my soul was about to collapse. It was caused by Delothro's soul shattering during the final battle. Fortunately, my luck is good, and I got my life back. Ben Hong, I just want to ask you, is your promise still valid? Humph! You should add a final particle so that it will be more threatening. You don't believe what I said? No, I can feel that you are not lying. The contempt on Ben Hong's face gradually disappeared. I know very well that if I break my promise, then I will lose my value to you. Before I make a decision, I also want to ask you a question. When Satan contacted you, did you have any special reaction? There shouldn't be any special reaction, if hostility is just a normal emotion. I said that I can feel the truth of your words. Ben Hong pointed at his head. If you don't want to answer, then this will be my last sentence. Okay. Shinrei shrugged. Satan was fine before, but after finally killing Delothro to determine the winner, his tone was a bit strange. He said that I'm an old friend, and he also said that after 10 years, he will end my journey to the real peak. Ben Hong was slightly shocked and became silent. I think he may have misunderstood something. Shinrei looked at Ben Hong, who bowed his head and raised his eyebrows. Or, he is not the only one who misunderstood. Whether it is a mistake or a misunderstanding, it doesn't matter. The key is to go down the path that you believe in. Similarly, you have to bear the consequences yourself. Ben Hong was not as deep as usual. With a strange emotion, he raised his head, and his eyes fell on Shinrei's face. The last question, do you believe in fate? If the fate that you know is controlled by the same god or goddess. Shinrei shrugged. Then unfortunately, I have a wish a long time ago. That is to let this beauty sing a song called Conquer for me in an indecent posture. Ben Hong's mouth curled into a slight arc, and his eyes flashed with a strange look. He suddenly bowed to him. I think I can try to find the value of what I have found, sir. Sir? Shinrei's heart moved, but he inexplicably felt that the title of Sir seemed to have been said by Ben Hong thousands of times. He frowned and said, Although it is very happy to get the help of a strong person like you, this should be the result of me fulfilling the agreement between us, not some kind of misunderstanding or deception. What I said is not important anymore. What is important is that for me, I have returned to the path I want to take. Ben Hong took a deep look at him. I swear by my soul to follow this person in front of me. Wherever the sword of fallen angel points, even if the enemy is a god, I will not be afraid. If I violate it, my soul will be destroyed and never exist in this world. Shinrei clearly felt that Ben Hong's soul oath was attached with a special power into the spiritual link, causing the original master-slave contract to have a special rule power. Once Ben Hong violated the oath, this rule power would erupt and directly destroy her soul. This was more demanding than the ordinary master-slave contract. Ben Hong's move surprised Shinrei a little. No matter what, the once biggest threat has become the biggest help. At least I can breathe a sigh of relief. I have many questions to ask you, but before that. Shinrei waved his hand, and the surrounding environment suddenly changed. Let's change to a more convenient place to talk first. Chapter 1079. Ben Hong looked at the new environment around him in surprise. This is the palace that Sir built with the power of the kingdom? The breath in here is quite amazing. It gives me the feeling that even the real temple of the kingdom of God is nothing more than this. Welcome to the Galaxy Divinity Temple. Shinrei smiled indifferently. I don't know what the real kingdom of God looks like, but you can see this place. It is some kind of existence similar to the kingdom of God. Sit down. Ben Hong frowned. He wanted to say something, but he finally held back and sat on the chair. The questions I want to ask mainly involve some secrets that should be called ancient or ancient. Shinrei thought for a while and said, I know that some secrets may have some restrictions and taboos. If you can't answer, I won't force you. Ben Hong nodded. Okay, then I'll start asking. The first question, what is the secret of the war between humans and demon realm every 500 years? I remember you once said that this is actually similar to a kind of sacrifice. No result is the rule of this war. Once someone violates the rule, it will be corrected? Why is there this kind of sacrifice? Who is it sacrificed to? Yes, they are all equivalent to sacrifices. Ben Hong sighed. In fact, in this world where the weak are prey to the strong, humans are all sacrifices. The weak are sacrificed to the strong, and the so-called strong are just playthings and sacrifices in the eyes of those truly supreme existences. Therefore, the only way is to become the supreme existence and truly look down on all living beings. The supreme existence you mentioned is the gods? Shinrei frowned. You haven't answered my previous question directly. Ben Hong was silent. Obviously, he didn't want to answer. Shinrei said it first, so he didn't force him. He asked again. What is the abyss? They are a curse and a taboo. Shinrei remembered that Satan once scolded Delothro as a cursed thing. The abyss also meant taboo in the ancient language, but he didn't understand what was going on. What curse is it? Why does the abyss want to destroy everything? Destruction is for creation. Ben Hong's expression was somewhat solemn. However, creation is built on the basis of erasing the original, including you, me, and everything else. This question, I can only answer you so much. The abyss that destroyed everything, what was it trying to create? The suspicions in Shinrei's heart grew, but all the previous questions had been answered. Why did the three supreme angels of the surface world and Satan of the demon world view the abyss as their greatest enemy? The next question is, what are the 7 divine artifacts? Overgod artifacts? If that's the case, why haven't the 7 divine artifacts been seized by the super powerhouses after so many years in the demon realm? The 7 divine artifacts, they can be described as the most exalted divine artifacts. They are also a type of taboo. Only those with scattered bloodlines can just barely use them. In truth, they are only able to activate the corresponding amount of power. No one can control the 7 artifacts at the same time, and no one can use their true power. Even Satan, me, and Michael can't. As he spoke, Ben Hong's gaze fell on Shinrei. Unless it's someone, unless? Someone? Shinrei showed a sudden realization and smiled bitterly. I understand. It's really a big misunderstanding. Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, you're the only person who can control the 7 artifacts. Ben Hong didn't look at Shinrei. Instead, she just extended her gaze toward the starry sky outside the hall. Maybe. She didn't continue and fell into silence again. Shinrei knew that this answer should end here. It seems that the root of the misunderstanding between Ben Hong, Water Elemental King, and others is the 7 artifacts. The problem is that someone should be recognized by the artifacts to control the 7 artifacts, and he is clearly occupying them like seizing women. The super system is too ruthless. It can even have sex with the overgod artifacts. What secrets do the Book of Destruction and the Book of Creation contain? What are the creation container or destruction container? If the Book of Creation is compared to a book, then the creation container is equivalent to the cover, which is also where the origin is sealed and preserved. I know you have the so-called 3 holy artifacts, but that's actually just something made with the cover. The real container, which has incredible sealing power, should still be in the Light Divinity Hall. This secret surprised Shinrei. It turns out that the 3 holy artifacts are not the real silver box. The book of creation and the book of destruction are the things left behind by the Creator when He created this world. Legend has it that the God called the Creator destroyed everything in 3 days, and then used another 3 days to create everything that exists today. The everything you said includes the deity? It was the second time Chunrui heard the term Creator from Ben Hong's mouth. This was simply a different world's version of the creation myth. In the original materialistic world, it would be dismissive, but in this plane, everything was possible, including the deity. Ben Hong pondered. Most of what I know about the Creator comes from hidden ancient legends. I can't determine the authenticity or more specific details. Speaking of the deity, Chunrui thought of something and asked, "What is the twilight of the deities? Are the deities really dead?" As soon as this question was asked, Chunrui suddenly felt that Ben Hong's face was a little strange. "Why are you looking at me like that?" This is another taboo question. The so-called death is actually the beginning of life. Everything in the world is a cycle of life and death. I can only answer this much. I suddenly feel that you have the potential to be an abbot. Chunrui sighed. Lady Almsgiver, you have a good trick. You asked so many questions, but almost all of them were specious answers. Ben Hong frowned. I don't have much research on alchemy. Abbot is a special honorary title? Okay, I was wrong. Chunrui shook his head. Although there were still many questions that were unclear, he finally had some clues. Maybe it's because the new soul power has not been completely digested. My thoughts are not very clear today. Some questions, let's ask next time. Sir, if you are done, can you let me say a few words? Chunrui was stunned, then nodded. Ben Hong pointed at the vast galaxy and said, I admit that this universe is extremely realistic, and even I was deceived a few times before. However, with all due respect, no matter how realistic the power of faith and life force of this divine kingdom is, it is still not a real existence. Sir, you should focus on understanding the origin of creation and origin of destruction, and strive to understand more powerful power as soon as possible, instead of wasting time on this illusory narcissism. You are wrong. I am not that bored to build a kingdom and call myself a god. This is simply deceiving myself. Chunrui shook his head. What I want to say is this should be the real universe. The real universe. Isn't this deceiving yourself? Ben Hong's eyes became cold, and his tone was not polite. Compared to Satan, your current strength is too far away. Whether it is power recovery or power advancement, 10 years is far from enough. If you really want to compete with him, then you must get rid of these flashy and impetuous things. Originally, I wanted to give you some special abilities, but it seems that before that, I must first correct your thinking. Ben Hong's impolite but pertinent criticism made Chunrui startled. In a flash, Veronica's figure appeared in front of him. Let me introduce, this is Veronica, this is Ben Hong. Veronica? Ben Hong looked at Veronica. I seem to have heard of this name when I was in the surface world, and it seems to be entangled with a certain identity of yours. I didn't expect you to extract her soul and turn her into your believer. Although this woman's soul is extremely weak, she is very talented. If Sir carries out soul fusion training with her, it should be greatly beneficial to the growth of your power. To be able to get a not bad evaluation was indeed a very high evaluation for Ben Hong, but Ms. Ben Hong seemed to be overestimating others. Veronica's soul was not deliberately extracted by Chunrui. Hearing Ben Hong's words, Veronica finally realized that this woman was completely different from the previous Rala and Catherine. She seemed to have another relationship with Chunrui, and she couldn't help but look surprised. Chunrui shrugged. Veronica, now I will give you a mission. 3 days. Make this Miss Ben Hong believe that we are in a real universe now. And then? Oracle? Veronica asked inquisitively. Chunrui understood what she meant, nodded, and glanced at Ben Hong. Ben Hong felt that there was a special power in her body, as if she had the power to control part of this vast universe. At the same time, Chunrui's image in her eyes suddenly became so tall that she could no longer look at him directly. Instead, she needed to look up at him like a god. Even with her current peak pseudo-god soul, it was still difficult to resist the emergence of this emotion. Sir, what did you do? Ben Hong's face changed slightly. This was the heart servant characteristic of the temple attendant. She maintained absolute over Chenrui, the controller, and put an end to all disobedience. When Chenrui looked at Ben Hong just now, he had already given her the ability of oracle, but it was just an ordinary oracle. Her power and authority were lower than Veronica. Feeling the shaken will of Ben Hong's heart servant, Chenrui thought about it, and cancelled the effect of this characteristic. Only then did Ben Hong come back to her senses, and she said emotionally, "What power was that just now? It doesn't seem like the power of contract. That feeling is simply, 'Come with me, Miss Ben Hong. We still have 3 days.' I believe that what you saw and felt with your own eyes is much more convincing than what I said directly." Veronica smiled slightly and walked out of the hall. Ben Hong felt a special power coming from this extremely weak woman, and she was actually being led forward involuntarily.